Chapter 370. This wasn't the first time Mystic Moon had visited Lin Yuan's residence. Even though Xianyu wouldn't come here every few days, Xianyu was a little worried. However, he would always come here once every half a month, so he was already very familiar with the place. However, Hu Quan had been sleeping during the day and working hard at night. In the past, Xianyu would usually come over in the morning. Therefore, this was the first time Hu Quan had seen Mystic Moon with his own eyes. The two moon envoys of the Radiant Moon Palace were famous throughout the world. Emissary Zhang was in charge of external affairs, while Emissary Xianyue was in charge of internal affairs. That was why Mount Huiyue's Zhang emissary's reputation was well known. But regarding the Black Moon envoys, those without strength and status knew very little. Only the Radiance Federation's top factions were qualified to know a thing or two. Therefore Hu Quan did not recognize Xianyu. However, when Hu Quan saw the silver robe, he seemed to vaguely recall a rumor. It was just that Hu Quan couldn't recall this rumor at the moment. On the other hand, Listen could tell that Mystic Moon and Lin Yuan had a close relationship. Lin Yuan had previously addressed Hu Quan as uncle Hu mainly because of Hu Quan's age, and it was a polite form of address. Now that Lin Yuan was addressing this silver-robed man as Uncle Mystic, even if they weren't related by blood, he was still an uncle on the level of family. Otherwise, this silver-robed man wouldn't have given Lin Yuan something on behalf of his master. Lin Yuan quickly picked up the teacup from the table and poured a cup of 3 treasures tea for Mystic Moon. Uncle Xian, have a cup of tea first. Mystic Moon took the teacup that Lin Yuan handed over and took a sniff before speaking in a clear voice. Little Yuan, there are plums in this 3 treasures tea. Smells good. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan chuckled and said, that's right. This was brewed by Wenyu. She added the plums that Uncle Xian sent over last time. Xianyu said as soon as she heard that Wenyu was the one who made it. When you went out to train, Wenyu and Kai Cha learned the way of tea for a few days. I heard from Kai Cha that Wenyu learned it pretty well. Xianyu's words were filled with praise for Wenyu. Clearly she thought very highly of Wenyu. As the moon envoy of the Leaning Moon Mountain's Radiant Moon Palace, Mystic Moon was the Moon Empress envoy. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the Radiant Moon Palace's chief steward. Wenyu was just a small spirit attendant in the Radiant Moon Palace, so it was impossible for Xianyu to take notice of her. Ever since Lin Yuan had chosen Wenyu as his assistant, she had finally appeared in Mystic Moon's line of sight. Xianyu also came into contact with Wenyu. In the beginning, Mystic Moon had advocated for sending 2 spirit attendants to be Lin Yuan's assistants. In the matter of building the manor, Wenyu had done an excellent job on her own. This allowed Mystic Moon to see Wenyu's strong ability to handle matters, which dispelled her intention of telling Lin Yuan about her proposal. However, Mystic Moon had truly thought highly of Wenyu when Lin Yuan had gone out to train. Back then, Wenyu had gone to the Radiant Moon Palace to look for the Moon Empress to become stronger, and the Moon Empress had given Wenyu some pointers regarding the Creation Master's abilities. Therefore, he threw Wenyu to Mystic Moon and asked her to bring her to understand the Radiance Federation's major factions. In the beginning, Mystic Moon only listened to the Moon Empress orders and guided Wenyu. However, the more Xianyu guided Wenyu, the more she discovered that Wenyu's strategy far exceeded that of an ordinary person. This allowed Mystic Moon to see Wenyu's true brilliance apart from being a spirit chi professional and a creation master. As the Radiant Moon Palace Master's moon envoy, Mystic Moon could not help but sigh at Wenyu's strong strategy in terms of faction understanding and resource allocation. In the past, when Wenyu had been a spirit attendant, she had not had the chance to display these talents. Now that Wenyu was standing in the position of Lin Yuan's assistant, she had the opportunity to display her talents. After Mystic Moon discovered Wenyu's talent in this area, she had carefully taught Wenyu for a month. This was why when Wenyu had returned to the manor to play the Fey Battle Flag game, she had been able to monopolize the 5 factions' resources and make Lin Yuan raise his eyebrows. After Mystic Moon finished the tea in the cup, she placed the teacup on the table. Then she waved her hand and took out a small square box made of beeswax. Mystic Moon handed the small square box to Lin Yuan and said, "This is a small thing your master made for you. This is a small thing your master made for you." Lin Yuan took the small square box and realized that Mystic Moon had the intention to leave, so he said, "Uncle Mystic Moon, sit here for a while. Uncle Xian, sit here for a while. I'll go wash some fruits for you." After saying that, Lin Yuan walked toward the kitchen and did not give Mystic Moon any chance to refuse. When Mystic Moon saw Lin Yuan like this, she could not help but laugh. Usually, Mystic Moon always felt that Lin Yuan was very capable and did not look like an 18 or 19-year-old youth at all. However, Lin Yuan's childish behavior had let Mystic Moon know. Lin Yuan had really treated her as a family member. Of course, when Lin Yuan called him Uncle Mystic Moon outside the Radiant Moon Palace, Mystic Moon felt it in her heart. It was also from that moment on that Mystic Moon treated Lin Yuan as the young lord of the Radiant Moon Palace and her young master. Mystic Moon also treated Lin Yuan as her junior, her nephew. After Lin Yuan went to wash the fruits, only Mystic Moon, Hu Quan and Listen were left in the huge living room. Mystic Moon glanced at Hu Quan and Listen and said, "Let's sit together for a while." Hu Quan and Listen were a little reserved when they saw Mystic Moon. It was not just because Mystic Moon was Lin Yuan's uncle. It was also because of Mystic Moon's clear and noble bearing. This kind of bearing was simply too transcendent. It was simply not something that ordinary people could have. When Mystic Moon heard Hu Quan and Lin Yuan's conversation, he heard Hu Quan say that he was a Class 5 spirit craftsman. Therefore, when he looked at Hu Quan, he could not help but think highly of him. When Mystic Moon heard Hu Quan say that he wanted to build a fey carriage, he could not help but ask, "What kind of materials do you think are suitable for the construction of the fey carriage?" Hu Quan was a little surprised. Why would this silver-robed man in front of him ask him such a question? However, since he had been asked, Hu Quan answered truthfully, "I think it's best to use completely jade-textured wood for the main body of the fey carriage, paired with some rare metals." After listening to Hu Quan's idea, Mystic Moon nodded with admiration. The combination of completely jade-textured wood and rare metals was indeed very suitable to make a fey carriage. It was not tacky, nor did it look very shabby. It was just a little worse than the coral stones shed from the suzerain gem coral. Then Mystic Moon asked again, "Then how many flying fays do you think are suitable to pull the fey carriage?" Hu Quan thought for a moment and replied, "Actually, 3 flying fays are enough. If the conditions allow it, it would be best to have 5. If the conditions don't allow it, 1 is actually not bad." Hu Quan was still thinking about making a fey carriage. On one hand, Hu Quan wanted to make this fey carriage because he was about to become a Class 5 spirit craftsman. He wanted to make an item that could represent his peak achievement after he became a Class 5 spirit craftsman. On the other hand, Hu Quan also wanted to repay Lin Yuan and contribute more to him. However, these words did not sound the same to Mystic Moon's ears. Mystic Moon almost thought that she had heard wrongly just now. Was this still the Class 5 spirit craftsman who had just said that he wanted to use completely jade-textured wood and rare metals to make a carriage? Mystic Moon really wanted to pry open Hu Quan's head and take a look inside. How poor and shabby had he been in the first half of his life? Only then could a Class 5 spirit craftsman say that a flying fey could pull a fey carriage. If only 1 flying fey was used to pull a fey carriage, what was the point of the fey carriage? Wasn't such a fey carriage just an urn that could not move a few hundred meters in the sky? Today's first chapter, end of this chapter. Chapter 371. In Mystic Moon's opinion, Lin Yuan was the Moon Empress disciple. There had to be at least 9 fays used to pull the fey carriage. If Lin Yuan liked more fays, it wouldn't be too much to ask for 12. Using multiple flying fays to pull the carriage might not increase the carriage's flying speed. However, if these flying fays that were pulling the chariot had defensive abilities, they would not be able to escape. The more flying fays there were, the safer the carriage could be. Mystic Moon looked at Hu Quan's expression. She realized that Hu Quan's expression was actually quite serious. Mystic Moon cleared her throat and asked, "Then how many fays do you think are more suitable?" Mystic Moon's question piqued Hu Quan's interest. Hu Quan replied without thinking, "If you want to show style, then the higher and rarer the fey, the better. If you want to show style, it is naturally better to use the rarer and higher grade fays to pull the chariot. There is no need to be so particular about the species of fays." Upon hearing Hu Quan's words, Mystic Moon had no intention of continuing to communicate with Hu Quan. If the fey pulling the carriage wanted to show its foundation, then it had to make the flying fays look uniform when flying. Otherwise, if there were as many flying fays pulling the carriage as there were different kinds of flying fays, wouldn't it be a shameless meeting and a mess? Therefore, it was best to only have one kind of fey pulling the carriage. This could ensure that the same kind of fey had the same flying speed. On the other hand, it could also ensure that there would be no friction between the same kind of high-grade phase during flight. It was impossible for the Fey carriage's owner to contract all the Feys that were pulling the carriage. Since there were no contracted Feys, the owner's control would be much weaker. Weak control, in addition, if there were some natural enemies between the two kinds of Feys. If there were friction between the two kinds of Feys in the sky, it would not cause any serious consequences even if they had been trained by creation masters. However, it was also very troublesome to appease the Fey that had friction. Moreover, as long as a precious Fey was pulling the carriage, it could show style. Let's get a high-grade flying turtle Fey and a high-grade flying snake Fey and put them together. What if you pretend to be a black tortoise in the sky? You're still telling others that I should give your Fey carriage 10 points? It was simply too unsophisticated. After hearing Hu Quan's words, Mystic Moon was even more determined to tell the Moon Empress about the lack of suitable flying Feys for the Fey carriage. At the same time, Mystic Moon was a little worried. If Lin Yuan were to be together with such a Class 5 spirit craftsman, would he be brought down by such a person? This was indeed a question worth pondering. Hu Quan was still immersed in the beautiful thought of building a Fey carriage. However, he did not know that Xianyu had already labeled him as a country bumpkin. In fact, if Hu Quan knew about it, he would definitely cry out in injustice. Hu Quan was just from a grassroots background, yet he dared to say that he would use completely jade-textured wood and rare metals to build the main body of the Fey carriage. It was because Hu Quan knew that Lin Yuan had these spiritual ingredients. If it wasn't for the fact that he had broadened his horizons during this period of time with Lin Yuan, he wouldn't have been able to do so. Hu Quan had never dared to think about something like a Fey carriage. Hu Quan was not to be blamed. If Hu Quan really became a Class 5 spirit craftsman, after Hu Quan's status and level increased, his horizons naturally increased as well. Mystic Moon turned to look at Listen and chatted with him for a while. Xianyu keenly discovered that Listen's talent in diplomacy didn't lose to Wen Yu's talent in strategy. In this way, Lin Yuan actually had a helper who could manage both internal and external matters. Just like him and Song Yu, who were beside the Moon Empress. If Cold Moon and Listen's external talents were likened to support-type spirit chi professionals. Thus, Cold Moon's method of support was to kill everything that could threaten her team. Using this kind of hardcore method to support, Listening was equivalent to turning all enemies hostile to his team into his own people. He was using this softcore method to assist. There were pros and cons to this type of support. However, Listen was still young and had time to grow. After Lin Yuan washed the fruits, he cut them into pieces that were suitable for eating. Then he placed a fruit platter and placed a few fruit forks on it before bringing it out. After chatting with Mystic Moon for a while, Mystic Moon left. Only Lin Yuan, Listen, and Hu Quan were left in the living room. Lin Yuan said with a serious expression, "Listen, your listening Heron Chamber of Commerce is still operating as usual." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Listen nodded and replied seriously, "Young master, I brought 11 source-type items this time. The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and I have pledged allegiance to you, so these source-type items are yours, young master." Lin Yuan said with a wave of his hand, "I'll still take 6 source-type items according to the previous remuneration. The remaining 5 source-type items will be the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's current resources. Do you want the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to maintain its current state?" Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Listen immediately expressed his stance. "No, I want the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to develop into a big chamber of commerce." Upon hearing Listen's words, Lin Yuan shook his head. Listen's diplomatic talents were outstanding. However, since Listen had been staying in the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, the layout was still a little too small. Listen needed some guidance to understand that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce could become more than just a large chamber of commerce. Or rather, Listen shouldn't just focus on the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce itself. Since you and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce have submitted to me, I will inject the first resource into the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and provide you with the same goods. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Listen knew that Lin Yuan had not finished speaking. At the same time, he was curious about what exactly the goods that Lin Yuan was talking about were. At that moment, Lin Yuan turned to look at Hu Quan. "Uncle Hu, after you become a Class 5 spirit craftsman, go find a construction team and let them build the guild club's base in the open space behind the manor." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan replied, "Don't worry, Lin Yuan. After I become a Class 5 spirit craftsman, as long as I say the word, there will be construction teams rushing to build the guild club's base for us. At that moment Hu Quan heard Lin Yuan say, "Don't worry, Lin Yuan. Uncle Hu, the powder of the completely jade-textured wood that we've collected previously can now be used." As soon as Hu Quan heard Lin Yuan's words, he understood what he meant. Completely jade-textured wood was so rare that only people with some foundation could not afford it at all. Therefore, those ornaments mixed with completely jade-textured wood powder and utensils made of completely jade-textured wood powder as glaze. They became luxuries sought after by those who did not have a deep foundation in the Radiance Federation. Any one of them could be sold for a high price of nearly 10,000 Radiance dollars. In Hu Quan's opinion, the resources that Lin Yuan had said he would inject into the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce should be these objects made of completely jade-textured wood powder. Hu Quan could not help but sigh. In this return from faraway manor, it seemed that everything was different from the outside world. Things that were hard to find in the outside world were treated as garbage in this return from faraway manor and could only gather dust in the warehouse. Listen was a smart person. From the conversation between Lin Yuan and Hu Quan, he knew what resources Lin Yuan was going to inject into him. Yesterday's second update, end of this chapter. Chapter 372. Then Listen fell into ecstasy. In fact, just this batch of goods alone was enough for the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to expand the Star Web online resources it had previously controlled by more than 5-fold. At the same time, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's offline resources could also make a qualitative leap. This made Listen see the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's bright future. To Listen, he had Lin Yuan as his backing. He did not have to worry about other factions plotting against him and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce in the future. It was another matter that Lin Yuan was willing to invest in him and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Listen did not expect that he had just led the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to submit to Lin Yuan. To be able to receive such preferential treatment. Listen had already sworn with the willpower rune to become Lin Yuan's man and could not rebel. However, Listen was really helpless when he swore. But now Listen had a sense of belonging. At the same time, Listen could not help but sigh inwardly. This feeling of having a big tree to lean on was really fucking awesome. Lin Yuan looked at the expression on Listen's face and smiled. "Listen, do you think the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce can only develop into a large chamber of commerce?" Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Listen hurriedly replied excitedly. "I feel that if objects made of completely jade-textured wood powder are deployed by the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, I'm confident in developing the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce into a rising force." Listen had already started to calculate in his heart how to mix these objects made of completely jade-textured wood powder. This kind of resource, which was in short supply in the market, was a good thing for Listen to make money and consolidate his connections. With such a good thing, he had to use it where it mattered most. At the same time, Listen also knew that Lin Yuan would not give him much of such a good thing. But as long as there was a small number of objects made of completely jade-textured wood powder, they would be able to absorb it. Listen was confident that he could bring the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to a higher level. Upon hearing Listen's words, Lin Yuan shook his head again. Lin Yuan did not expect Listen to still not jump out of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's framework. Apart from the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, how many other assets do you think you can coordinate? Lin Yuan's words were like a heavy hammer that knocked on Listen's heart. This heavy sentence directly broke the chain binding Listen's heart, causing the invisible chain to break inch by inch. It also released the beast in Listen's heart. 2 flames of ambition seemed to ignite in Listen's eyes. Listen clenched his fists under the table until they turned white, but he pretended to be calm on the surface. He could look for a grade 3 spirit craftsman to help solve it. After hearing Hu Quan's words, Listen's previous worry and panic completely disappeared. If there were 200 objects made of completely jade-textured wood powder in a single day, that would be 6,000 pieces in a month. 6,000 objects of various sizes made from completely jade-textured wood powder. Based on the scarcity of the market, it wouldn't be a problem to sell it for 60 million Radiance dollars. Half a year was a total of 6 months, which was 360 million Radiance dollars. He had taken Lin Yuan's 360 million Radiance dollars. If they couldn't develop the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce into a rising force, The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce wouldn't be able to do so. Listen felt that he was too useless. Listen calculated carefully. If the resources were used properly, in that case, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce would have the capital to attack a rising faction within 3 months. With resources and a lot of radiance dollars, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce could completely take the path of a veteran faction. They would use resources to attract high-ranked spirit chi professionals to work for the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Lin Yuan looked at Listen again and asked, "I'll give you half a year, is that enough?" Listen hurriedly said, "Young master, I am confident that I can complete the task you have given me within 4 months." After giving some instructions, Listen left the mansion. The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had already moved to the royal capital, and Listen still had many things to do. Hu Quan had already returned to his room to contract the Bronze/Legend Wood Weaving House Centipede. He had to hurry and fuse the Bronze/Legend Wood Weaving House Centipede with his willpower rune. Make the Wood Weaving House Centipede a fantasy breed fae. The moment the Wood Weaving House Centipede became a fantasy breed fae, Hu Quan had transformed into a true Class 5 spirit craftsman. Lin Yuan was the only one left in the hall. Lin Yuan was carrying Genius back to his room. Suddenly his brows furrowed. He felt that red thorn, which had been in the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box, had eaten some dimensional life form. It had actually undergone a certain degree of mutation. Third update yesterday asking for tickets, end of this chapter. Chapter 373. After Lin Yuan felt Red Thorn's spiritual feedback, he immediately cast his gaze on the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box in front of his chest. He used his spiritual energy to sense the situation in the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. He saw Red Thorn squeaking and digesting the dimensional lifeform's flesh in the face storage box. The mouth of Relinquish trembled like a furnace as it operated rapidly. At the same time, there was a roar when the dimensional lifeform's flesh melted. The tongue of Relinquish secreted special acids for different dimensional lifeforms' flesh in the mouth of Relinquish. It ensured that the flesh-devouring furnace, the mouth of Relinquish, would never be overloaded. The acid corrosion queen bee lay comfortably on the huge flesh-shaped flower above the mouth of Relinquish. From time to time, it would transport the acid-swallowing larvae it had produced through its gold ability from the hive it had built in the mouth of Relinquish. Then the acid corrosion queen bee flew up and carried the acid-swallowing larvae into the mouth of Relinquish's open mouth like it was offering a treasure. It was like a servant offering a treasure to the queen. However, the queen received the treasure without any reaction and did not show the slightest response. However, the acid corrosion queen bee was enjoying it and even danced on the mouth of Relinquish's flesh-shaped flower. Lin Yuan could not help but hold his forehead. Ever since the acid corrosion queen bee had lived in the big house, it had been licking Red Thorn to the point that Lin Yuan could not stand it anymore. Lin Yuan roughly checked Red Thorn's appearance in the spirit lock spatial zone. He found that there was not much change in Red Thorn's appearance. Lin Yuan looked at the huge living room of his mansion and summoned Red Thorn from the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. The summoned Red Thorn was like a huge pumpkin-shaped sphere that was demonic, ferocious and beautiful. However, this huge pumpkin-shaped sphere had dozens of mouths of Relinquish. The tongue of Relinquish stirred in the mouth of Relinquish, helping the mouth of Relinquish digest the remaining food. The 60 awe-inspiring eyes of Relinquish blinked frequently, and a strange luster appeared on the surface every time they blinked. The 12 useless red flowers that grew out of Red Thorn's digestive cavity were nearly 1 meter in size. They could not be any more beautiful. When Lin Yuan summoned Red Thorn, he focused his attention on the massive flower that had a diameter of 1 meter. Lin Yuan immediately saw where exactly Red Thorn's appearance had changed. Previously, the 12 huge red flowers with a diameter of 1 meter were completely useless. The only value of these flowers was to increase Red Thorn's appearance. At the same time, Red Thorn could also emit sounds like a musical instrument based on the 12 flowers. But now, in the middle of these 12 large red flowers that were nearly a meter in diameter, there were many filamentous membranes growing out of the layers of petals. It looked as if this huge red flower was made up of nearly 100 dark red gills. At that moment, Lin Yuan finally knew why Red Thorn had suddenly comprehended the ability to breathe underwater. From a plant-type source-type life form that could only grow on land, it became an amphibious source-type life form. The appearance of the 12 huge red flowers that were nearly a meter in diameter was the reason why red thorn could survive underwater. Lin Yuan had already checked the leaf-shaped diamond phase storage box's situation. He discovered the water world dimensional life form's flesh in the leaf-shaped diamond phase storage box. The flesh and blood of the gold water world dimensional life forms had all disappeared, coupled with the transformation of red thorn's 12 huge flowers. It was obvious that red thorn had eaten those water world dimensional creatures. It was a mutation that occurred after digesting the flesh and blood of the gold water world dimensional life forms. At that moment, Morbius' voice rang out in his mind. Lin Yuan, it's great news that red thorn can mutate and gain the ability to breathe underwater. Lin Yuan nodded as he was also very surprised by red thorn's mutation. Lin Yuan had never had a fae that could fight in the water. Although the spirit-drawing ichthyosaur Blackie was an aquatic fae, it didn't look like an aquatic fae. However, as a support-type aquatic fae that could replenish spiritual power, the spirit-drawing ichthyosaur Blackie did not possess combat ability. However, when red thorn had completely mutated into an amphibious creature, it was extremely dangerous. In that case, red thorn would be able to unleash the same strength underwater as it was on land. By spreading the sea of flowers at the bottom of the water, red thorn could indirectly control a part of the water. This mutation directly increased red thorn's strategic significance by a huge margin. At the same time, he was also secretly shocked by the water world dimensional life form's flesh. Just like the flesh of the alien insect dimensional life forms and abyss dimensional life forms that red thorn had previously devoured. One increased the acidity of red thorn's body, while the other increased red thorn's fire resistance and withering characteristics. However, the flesh and blood of the water world dimensional life forms directly opened up a new combat field for red thorn. Upon hearing Morbius' words, Lin Yuan replied, "It's a pity that the gold water world dimensional life form's flesh in the leaf-shaped phase storage box is too little." As he spoke, he used his hand to touch red thorn, whose petals had already turned into gill-shaped flowers. Lin Yuan carefully examined it. Lin Yuan realized that the gill-like petals were only on the outer layer of the huge flower. Many of the petals in the inner layer were still the same as before. It was obvious that red thorn's ability to breathe underwater hadn't been completely mutated. Red thorn still needed to devour more gold water world dimensional life forms' flesh. After Lin Yuan summoned red thorn, it immediately weaved the thornless vine into a rattan chair. Red thorn controlled the vines to send the rattan chair under Lin Yuan's butt. He even shook the rattan chair twice, indicating for Lin Yuan to sit down quickly. At the same time, the 12 huge flowers blew at the same time. But this time Lin Yuan was surprised to find that the sound that red thorn blew with the flowers was actually somewhat similar to his name. Then Lin Yuan felt red thorn transmit a proud emotion to him. It was like a 7 or 8-year-old little girl who had scored 100 points on a test and was waiting for her father to praise her. Lin Yuan was very happy that red thorn could actually make the sound of his name through this huge flower that had gill-like petals. This meant that red thorn already had the ability to learn languages. With this kind of sign of language learning ability, as long as someone carefully taught it after a period of time, red thorn would be able to communicate with Lin Yuan directly like genius. Among all of Lin Yuan's fays, Morbius was undoubtedly the most intelligent, followed by genius. Between Chimey and red thorn, Chimey's intelligence should be higher. However, Chimey still couldn't speak yet. This was because Chimey's singing ability was very similar to a parrot's ability to learn to speak. Chimey used the songstress bird's talent to quickly remember a melody and then sing it after memorizing it. However, Lin Yuan believed that as long as Chimey's quality and grade were improved, it wouldn't be long before Chimey could speak directly. As a plant-type source-type life form, red thorn already had such high intelligence when it was at Silver/Fantasy Eye. Thinking about it, it must be related to Endless Summer's Enlightenment Willpower rune. On the other hand, in Lin Yuan's opinion, it should be related to the way red thorn obtained energy. Red thorn grew by absorbing a huge amount of flesh and blood energy. This huge amount of flesh and blood energy could completely promote the development of red thorn's intelligence. This was somewhat similar to the history of human development. Human civilization only began to develop after humans began to eat meat and changed from herbivores to omnivores. In a sense, eating meat was power. Of course, Lin Yuan added another sentence in his heart. If you eat meat, it's best to eat pork. And it must be Uncle Lee's blackback mountain boar meat. Sensing Red Thorn's urgent need for praise, Lin Yuan sat on the chair weaved by Red Thorn's vines and praised Red Thorn generously. Red Thorn is awesome. Red Thorn knows how to call my name so quickly. Red Thorn is the smartest. Chapter 374. When Red Thorn was displaying its merits, he had to constantly encourage and affirm it. This was because encouragement would allow Red Thorn to be more motivated when it learned to speak in the future. When Red Thorn heard Lin Yuan's praise, its 12-meter-long flowers happily stretched to a diameter of 1.2 meters. Lin Yuan sensed Red Thorn's happy mood and said, "Red Thorn, can you learn how to read from me in the future? If you learn how to read, you will be able to communicate with me like how Genius communicates with me in the future." At this moment, the 12 huge flowers of Red Thorn actually trembled together. It was obvious that Red Thorn was using its own method to express that it accepted Lin Yuan's suggestion and was very interested in it. Lin Yuan praised Red Thorn once again. He still had to affirm Red Thorn's willingness to learn in time. At that moment, Genius jumped from Lin Yuan's arms to one of Red Thorn's large flowers. "Red Thorn, I can teach you how to read every day." Red Thorn and Genius had an extremely good relationship. When Red Thorn heard Genius's words, it turned its body and used the large flowers to play with Genius. Morbius said in Lin Yuan's mind, "Spirit crystals don't work on Red Thorn." Lin Yuan, spirit chi crystals are ineffective against Red Thorn. If we can let Red Thorn grow, we will be able to explore the sea and obtain some rare resources from the sea. Lin Yuan sensed that Red Thorn was now a silver/fantasy breed. "I have to test the rhizome produced by Red Thorn to see if it can survive underwater. If it's possible, it's not impossible to develop the current shallow sea." Lin Yuan carried Genius down from the large flower and placed it on the water rhinoceros leather sofa. "Genius, wait for me here. When I return, I will bring you upstairs to sleep." Genius meowed and rubbed its small head against Lin Yuan's hand. Lin Yuan rubbed Genius's head and stored Red Thorn in the diamond face storage box. He walked out of the mansion's entrance and walked toward the manor's artificial lake. On the way to the artificial lake, Lin Yuan took out a small piece of completely jade-textured wood from the diamond face storage box. The completely jade-textured wood emitted a gentle light in Lin Yuan's hand. It directly illuminated a 3-meter radius around Lin Yuan. The light of this completely jade-textured wood was very gentle, making people feel very comfortable. The light emitted by the completely jade-textured wood blended with the bright moonlight in the sky. At this moment, the cold moonlight of the early winter also carried a bit of a refreshing taste. The man-made lake in the manor was 5 meters deep. When you had nurtured many decorative aquatic fays in this rather large artificial lake. All kinds of fish were swimming in groups in the artificial lake. He walked to the artificial lake and summoned Red Thorn at the shore of the artificial lake. Then he asked Red Thorn to enter the water according to his situation. Although Lin Yuan could sense that Red Thorn's mutation had given it the ability to breathe underwater, Lin Yuan couldn't help but feel that Red Thorn's mutation had given it the ability to breathe underwater. However, Red Thorn had not completely mutated. Therefore, Lin Yuan was afraid that Red Thorn would not be able to adapt to this 5-meter-deep artificial lake. It was also Red Thorn's first time encountering water. Perhaps because it had eaten the flesh of the water world dimensional life forms, Red Thorn wasn't afraid of water. Red Thorn directly jumped into the 5-meter-deep artificial lake. Lin Yuan immediately looked nervously at Red Thorn, which had sunk to the bottom of the lake. Immediately after, Lin Yuan discovered that Red Thorn, which had sunk to the bottom of the lake, had its 12 massive flowers fully opened. The gill-shaped petals swayed in the water, making Red Thorn very comfortable in the water. At this moment, Lin Yuan's clothes were completely drenched by the splash of water when Red Thorn jumped into the artificial lake. Lin Yuan simply jumped into the artificial lake and dived to the bottom of the 5-meter-deep artificial lake. Then he communicated with Red Thorn telepathically. He asked Red Thorn to summon a few rammets. Regardless of whether it was the nibbling vine-like rammets or the small spore-shaped rammets. Red Thorn summoned a few rammets. At the beginning, the nibbling vine-like rammets twisted uncomfortably in the water. After a period of time, Red Thorn channeled energy to the nibbling vine-like rammets. The nibbling vine-like rammets were not as nimble as they were on land. As for the small spore-shaped ramets, they lost the ability to release spores after a while. It was obvious that Red Thorn's underwater breathing ability had not been passed on to the ramets. Although it seemed that Red Thorn could freely survive underwater, the artificial lake was only 5 meters deep. Lin Yuan was still unable to measure the limit of Red Thorn's underwater survival. However, if there was a large amount of gold water world dimensional lifeforms flesh for Red Thorn to devour, when Red Thorn's 12 massive flowers and stamens became gill-shaped. At that time, Red Thorn's underwater breathing ability could be said to have completely mutated. Lin Yuan estimated that at that time, regardless of whether Red Thorn was nibbling vine-like ramets or small spore-shaped ramets, it should be able to inherit the underwater breathing ability from Red Thorn. Therefore, the next most important thing was for Lin Yuan to obtain the flesh of gold water world dimensional lifeforms. After Lin Yuan came out of the artificial lake, Red Thorn, who was breathing freely at the bottom of the 5-meter-deep artificial lake, returned to the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. He allowed Red Thorn to continue devouring the dimensional lifeform's flesh and energy to increase its grade and quality. Then Lin Yuan shook off the water stains on his body and walked into the mansion. It was currently early winter in the royal capital, and the temperature in the middle of the night had already reached below zero. As Lin Yuan's body was emitting heat, his wet clothes didn't freeze when the cold wind of the early winter night blew. However, when the cold wind blew, it quickly took away the heat in Lin Yuan's body. It made Lin Yuan feel cool and refreshing. Fortunately, Lin Yuan had used the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar to wash the impurities in his body and improve his gene template. Therefore, Lin Yuan's resistance was extremely high. In addition, Lin Yuan was already a C-rank spirit chi professional. Illnesses like colds and fevers were already far away from Lin Yuan. After returning to the mansion, Lin Yuan saw that Genius had already fallen asleep on the water rhinoceros skin sofa. Genius was lying on the water rhinoceros skin sofa, and its small head was still looking in the direction of the door. It was obviously waiting for Lin Yuan to return. However, as it waited, Genius fell asleep. Lin Yuan looked at his wet clothes and felt the temperature of his hands. Lin Yuan used his mouth to blow a few breaths and realized that his hands were still cold. Lin Yuan was afraid that his hands were too cold and would wake Genius up when he hugged it. Thus, Lin Yuan returned to his room and took a hot shower. After changing into clean clothes, Lin Yuan went downstairs and gently carried Genius back to his room. After placing Genius on the bed, Lin Yuan carefully covered Genius with a small blanket. Then Lin Yuan directly entered Starweb. Second update for yesterday, end of chapter. Chapter 375. Lin Yuan logged onto Starweb this time to help Red Thorn buy some gold water world dimensional lifeforms flesh. In fact, Lin Yuan could tell from the amount of dimensional lifeforms flesh that his master, the Moon Empress, had placed in the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. The water world dimensional lifeforms flesh was scarce. When Lin Yuan had gotten the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box, he had been very excited. Whether it was the alien insect dimensional rift, the abyss dimensional rift, the swamp dimensional rift, or the underground dimensional rift. In these 4-dimensional rifts that had opened on land, almost every dimensional lifeform's flesh had the same amount. However, if one really wanted to compare, the alien insect dimensional lifeform's flesh was slightly more. However, compared to the flesh of these 4-dimensional rifts that had opened on land, there were only over 300 of them. Among them, there were over 200 gold water world dimensional lifeforms flesh and nearly 80 platinum water world dimensional lifeforms flesh. Among them, there were over 200 gold water world dimensional lifeforms flesh and nearly 80 platinum water world dimensional lifeforms flesh. As for the more than 200 gold water world dimensional creatures' flesh, they had been completely digested by Red Thorn during this period of time. The remaining 80 platinum water world dimensional lifeforms flesh were still stored in the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. Given Red Thorn's current grade, it still could not digest the platinum water world dimensional lifeforms flesh and blood. If it forcefully devoured them, it would not only cause a waste of the platinum water world dimensional lifeforms flesh and blood energy. At the same time, it would also cause a great burden on Red Thorn's mouth of relinquish. Therefore, the remaining 80 platinum water world dimensional lifeforms flesh were something that Red Thorn could only look at but not eat. Compared to the other 4-dimensional rifts that had opened on land, The water world dimensional rift only opened in the sea. The sea had always been a paradise for marine fays. Even in the coastal waters, human spirit chi professionals were relatively rare. The water world dimensional rifts opened in the sea. The water world dimensional life forms that gushed out of the dimensional rifts would soon be hunted by marine fays. Therefore, the probability of human spirit chi professionals finding the water world dimensional rifts in the coastal waters was extremely small. After Lin Yuan logged on StarWeb, he first went to his Purchase with No Loss store to take a look. He found that a few new people had joined his Purchase with No Loss store's fan club. It should be the creation master or spirit chi professional that had purchased the flower brocade pearls during the blind trade. Lin Yuan did not care about his Purchase with No Loss store's fan club. This time, Lin Yuan displayed 10 flower brocade pearls in his Purchase with No Loss store again, and he still used the blind trade method to sell them. After the previous blind trade for the silver flood dragon species phase essence blood, he had learned his lesson. This time Lin Yuan's blind trade was the same as the first time. In exchange for a strange flame, the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree and Chimey absorbed the 130 mid-grade strange flames sealed in the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's leaves. More than half of it had already been absorbed. Lin Yuan could clearly sense a trace of transformation in Chimey's bloodline. He planned to exchange for more strange flames so that Chimey could reach Fantasy 3 before he ran for the Radiance 100 sequence. At that time, the bloodline hidden in Chimey's body would be directly stimulated. Chimey would transform from a twilight starbird into a new fae. He could then take the spirit chi crystals he had accumulated and let Chimey raise its grade. After its grade was raised, the Fantasy 3 exclusive skill, Radiant Body, would be Lin Yuan's most powerful single-target means. Therefore, Lin Yuan was now using the flower brocade pearls as a scythe. He would treat those mid-grade strange flames as leeks. He would use the scythe to cut these leeks one by one. He would collect the scattered leeks in the market into his pocket for the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree and Chimey to use. Lin Yuan's Purchase with No Loss store once again publicly displayed 10 flower brocade pearls. It was equivalent to sending a message to the outside world. The message was, "I have plenty of flower brocade pearls." Lin Yuan had not checked any faction's information before contacting any faction. It was because he wanted to wait for a suitable opportunity. And after this blind trade, the time was obviously ripe. Based on the speed at which Lin Yuan's Purchase with No Loss store was selling the flower brocade pearls, Lin Yuan would soon accumulate a large number of flower brocade pearls. Lin Yuan did not intend to sell the accumulated flower brocade pearls through blind trading. Lin Yuan planned to bundle these flower brocade pearls with 10 flower brocade pearls as a unit, to exchange for resources that were a level higher than the flower brocade pearls with factions and creation masters that urgently needed them. It would be unsuitable for those factions and creation masters to exchange with him. However, if he could obtain a large number of flower brocade pearls in one go, it would save him a lot of time and effort. There would still be plenty of factions and creation masters willing to trade. After dealing with the matters in his Purchase with No Loss store, Jiang Fei had already left. He went to look for the merchant who sold the flesh of dimensional life forms and fays that Zhou Xian had recommended to him a few months ago. Lin Yuan arrived at the destination. He saw a boorish man sitting in front of the shop with a frown on his face, flipping through the account books. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan greeted him. "Brother Feng, why are you so worried?" When the boorish big brother Feng raised his head and saw Lin Yuan, he felt as though he had a vague impression of this youth. When Lin Yuan saw that the boorish big brother Feng didn't recognize him, he gave a hint. "Brother Feng, big sister Zhou Xian recommended me." The boorish big brother Feng's eyes flashed with a trace of understanding. He closed the account book and stood up. "I remember now. Isn't it going to be the new year soon? Recently, the Fae's flesh has been selling well and earning a lot of money. But the dimensional life form's flesh is all here and can't be sold at a lower price." Lin Yuan wanted to say a few words of comfort, but just as he was about to say them, he held them back. Lin Yuan really had no way to comfort him. It was going to be the active period of the dimensional rifts that happen once every 10 years. At that time, there would definitely be a large number of dimensional life forms' flesh flowing into the market. Therefore, if the dimensional life form's flesh in Big Brother Feng's hands could not be sold before the new year, it would be even harder to sell after the new year. Lin Yuan immediately stated his purpose for coming here. Brother Feng, I want to buy some dimensional life form's flesh. Upon hearing that, the boorish big brother Feng's expression obviously improved. He asked, what kind of dimensional life form's flesh do you want and what grade? It's the end of the year, I'll sell it to you at a reduced price. I'll give you a 30% discount on the flesh of insect dimensional creatures. I'll give you a 50% discount on the flesh of swamp dimensional creatures. I'll give you a 40% discount on the flesh of underground dimensional creatures. I'll give you a 30% discount on the flesh of abyss dimensional creatures. How's the price? Lin Yuan didn't expect Big Brother Feng to give him such a low price. However, Lin Yuan didn't wish to buy the flesh of these dimensional life forms. Brother Feng, I want the flesh and blood of the water world dimensional life forms. Lin Yuan had just finished speaking when he suddenly felt the boorish Big Brother Feng's expression turn stern. Kid, you're messing with me, right? Lin Yuan did not understand why this boorish man Big Brother Feng would say such a thing. Lin Yuan could not help but mutter in his heart. Play you? How should I play you? What's so fun about you? I'm only here to buy dimensional creature flesh. Stay up all night long, sob sob sob. Please order all of them, reward me, my recent grades have dropped by half. Sob sob sob, buttons are so pitiful. End of chapter. Chapter 376. The boorish Big Brother Feng was already worried about the upcoming active period of the dimensional rift. When he thought of how he still had a large amount of dimensional creature flesh that he hadn't sold, the boorish Brother Feng couldn't even eat. When Lin Yuan said that he wanted to buy dimensional life forms flesh, Big Brother Feng was very happy. The boorish Big Brother Feng even gave Lin Yuan a discount on the dimensional life forms flesh and sold them at the base price. It could even be said that the flesh and blood of insect dimensional creatures were at a 30% discount. Brother Feng was selling them at a loss. However, Brother Feng didn't expect this. Lin Yuan actually wanted the water world dimensional life forms flesh. Was this something that people would buy? Or rather, how could anyone want to buy the flesh of a water world dimensional creature? When the boorish Big Brother Feng saw that Lin Yuan was confused, his aggrieved expression didn't seem to be fake. He said patiently, have you seen the flesh and blood of water world dimensional creatures? Lin Yuan was still wondering why Big Brother Feng had asked him to play with him. Upon hearing Big Brother Feng's question, Lin Yuan immediately answered. Of course I've seen the flesh and blood of water world dimensional creatures. When Big Brother Feng heard Lin Yuan's words, he immediately replied in a bad mood. You've seen the flesh of water world dimensional creatures, so you should know the taste of their flesh. Can that kind of thing be taken out and sold? Do you want me to kill everyone with my stench? Lin Yuan touched the back of his head. He recalled that the flesh of the water world dimensional life forms was in the diamond face storage box. He had never taken out the flesh of the water world dimensional life forms to check. The water world dimensional creatures were not small in size. In particular, most of the platinum water world life forms in the diamond face storage box were more than 8 meters long. The largest platinum water world dimensional creature was more than 25 meters long. It was inconvenient for him to take out such a big thing. However, as for the smell that Brother Feng mentioned, the flesh and blood of dimensional creatures did not smell good. The flesh and blood of the alien insect dimensional life forms carried a strong sour smell. The flesh and blood of the abyss dimensional creatures carried a strong smell of sulfur. However, even if the flesh and blood of a water world dimensional creature smells bad, it shouldn't be enough to kill the people around him, right? After listening to Big Brother Feng's words, Lin Yuan knew that it would be impossible for him to buy the water world dimensional life forms flesh on Star Web. The flesh of dimensional creatures was useless to begin with, so there had always been very few channels to sell it. For someone like Brother Feng, who had a channel to import dimensional life forms flesh and blood, it could be said that he knew very well if there was any stock of water world dimensional life forms flesh and blood. Brother Feng's current reaction meant that there was no sale of the flesh and blood of water world dimensional creatures in his entire channel. It seemed that it would be difficult for him to find a place that would sell water world dimensional life forms flesh. However, he did not understand why anyone would be willing to buy the water world dimensional life forms flesh, so he asked, Big Brother Feng, why would anyone be willing to buy the water world dimensional life forms flesh? Brother Feng, why doesn't anyone buy the flesh of the water world dimensional creatures? When Big Brother Feng heard Lin Yuan's question, he recalled that Lin Yuan had bought dimensional life forms flesh from him before, so he wrinkled his nose and said, yes. The first point is that the flesh and blood of the water world dimensional life forms are highly toxic. Although the bodies of the water world dimensional life forms contain nutrients that are beneficial to water type phase, the water world dimensional life forms aren't as powerful as water phase. However, the poison contained in the water world dimensional life forms will cause a large amount of stinky mucus to appear on the surface of spirit objects that consume the flesh and blood of water dimensional life forms. Then the surface of the Fae wrapped in mucus will constantly fester. That's why only a fool would want to buy the flesh of a water world dimensional creature. Of course, this is only the first point. The second point is that if the flesh of the water world dimensional life forms is not immediately placed in the Fae storage box, it will be destroyed. After leaving the seawater and being exposed to the air for a few minutes, it will immediately rot. After decaying, the water world dimensional creature will immediately change from an unbearable stench to a rotten stench. I don't think anyone can endure that smell. As he spoke, Brother Feng wrinkled his nose with lingering fear. He expressed that he didn't want to recall that stench anymore. At this moment, Brother Feng suddenly had some doubts. Why did the cheerful youth in front of him want to buy the flesh of a water world dimensional creature for no reason? Kid, what's the use of buying the water world dimensional creature's flesh? I have plenty of water type Fae flesh here. If you need it, I can give you a 10% discount. The boorish Big Brother Feng had a very good impression of Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan's body emitted a faint aura of natural sunlight. It was easy for people to have a good impression of him after interacting with him. Lin Yuan replied awkwardly after hearing Big Brother Feng's words. I'm buying the water world dimensional life forms flesh to feed Faes. Chapter 377. Big Brother Feng said forthrightly to Lin Yuan. Come, follow me to the storeroom to take a look. I happen to have a few golden-edged skirt fish here. These are all prepared for those big restaurants. If you like any of them, you can pick them first. Speaking up to this point, Brother Feng suddenly gritted his teeth. Kid, have you heard of the Radiance 100 Sequences Zhou Xian who has the title of anorexia? Lin Yuan felt that Big Brother Feng's thoughts were too jumpy. Why did the topic suddenly jump to Zhou Xian? Lin Yuan wasn't very familiar with Zhou Xian. However, Lin Yuan had indeed met Zhou Xian with both of his identities, so he asked, why? Brother Feng, do you like Zhou Xian? When Brother Feng thought of Zhou Xian, he gritted his teeth in hatred. Now that Lin Yuan had asked if she liked Zhou Xian, she felt a little embarrassed. He lost control of his emotions and slapped his thighs with his hands. What the hell is Zhou Xiaoqun's stomach made of? He can eat so much. My high-grade ingredients are mainly sold in the capital, but most of the restaurants in the capital have been eaten up by Zhou Xiaoqun. I really don't know why this bottomless pit of gluttony is called anorexia. It's obvious that the previous Critical Needle girl is more realistic. I've watched Zhou Xiaoqun's matches several times. I really can't see how such a skinny little girl could bankrupt so many restaurants. At the mention of Zhou Xiaoqun, the boorish man, Brother Feng, became a chatterbox. Lin Yuan did not know how to comfort Big Brother Feng. It was just like how Lin Yuan did not know how to comfort Shirsu when he was in the controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift. Compared to Brother Feng, Shirsu was obviously in a worse state. After thinking for a while, Lin Yuan said, that's right. Zhou Xiaoqun's nickname is anorexia. Maybe anorexia means to eliminate all food so there's no food. Lin Yuan's words made Big Brother Feng choke. Before he could even breathe, Brother Feng was choked to the point of burping. Brother Feng told himself in his heart, if I don't get angry when others get angry, no one will be able to replace me when I get angry until I get sick. After all, he still had a store to run. Brother Feng thought to himself that he must quickly sell the golden-edged fringed fish to this kid. Then he would make this kid scram immediately. Why does this brat's words sound even more infuriating than Zhou Xiaoqun's? Lin Yuan followed Big Brother Feng to the storeroom where the rare ingredients were stored. Lin Yuan realized that Big Brother Feng really had a lot of good stuff. Although there weren't any precious platinum ingredients, there were quite a few gold ingredients. When Lin Yuan saw that these gold ingredients were of good quality, he made up his mind to buy more. The manor had Endless Summer and the Mother of Bloodbath, the two big eaters. Lin Yuan heard the obvious sound of waves on Gao Feng's phone. It was obvious that Gao Feng should be listening to the waves at the seaside. Lin Yuan had always thought that Gao Feng had posted this friend circle because he was pretentious. He didn't expect Gao Feng to really be listening to the sea at the seaside. It was winter and the wind in Misty Wind City was strong. Listening to the sea at the seaside was too thoughtful. Before Lin Yuan could speak, Gao Feng's pretentious and surprised voice came from the other end of the phone. "Brother, are you calling me at this time because you miss me?" Hee hee. Lin Yuan could hear the fatigue in Gao Feng's voice through the phone. Before Lin Yuan could speak, Gao Feng said, "Brother, I'm at the seaside. Brother, I am by the sea. Listen to the sound of the sea." Then Lin Yuan felt as though Gao Feng had rushed the phone's microphone into the sea. The sound of the waves was not clear to Lin Yuan. However, the sound of the sea breeze blew up the phone's microphone. Lin Yuan was a little confused. The world of this literary youth was simply too difficult to understand. However, Lin Yuan had already regarded Gao Feng as his friend. Hearing the fatigue in Gao Feng's voice, Lin Yuan didn't talk about his own matters first. Instead he asked Gao Feng, "What happened recently? You made yourself so tired." Second update: seeking recommendation votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 378. Gao Feng had wanted to go to the seaside because he was in a bad mood. Otherwise it would have been better to stay at home during the winter. Why would he come out to face the knife-like sea breeze in early winter? Upon hearing Lin Yuan's question, Gao Feng's heart warmed. At the same time he was a little surprised. His father had just told him not to go out and be crazy for too long before he left. However, he did not hear the exhaustion in his voice at all. But now Lin Yuan could hear the exhaustion in his voice through the phone. Gao Feng knew that no matter how meticulous Lin Yuan was, he could hear the exhaustion in his voice. However, if Lin Yuan did not regard him as a friend, he would definitely not ask what he had encountered. Gao Feng sighed and said, "Brother, you don't know that those Class 5 spirit craftsmen are too difficult to invite. Brother, you don't know how difficult it is to invite those Class 5 spirit craftsmen. I'm afraid of wasting those 4 pieces of completely jade-textured supreme-grade green elm." After Gao Feng finished speaking, he thought that he would use the Gao family's connections to invite a Class 5 spirit craftsman. During this time, Gao Feng had been thinking about giving the old master a gift. Therefore he had not used the Gao family's connections. Instead he had been using the connections he had accumulated to plan this matter. However, Gao Feng now found that without the Gao family's connections, he could not invite a Class 5 spirit craftsman with his own strength. Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly when he heard Gao Feng's words. Lin Yuan thought it was something else, but it turned out that it was because of the 4 completely jade-textured green elm boards. It had been a month since Lin Yuan had traded the completely jade-textured green elm boards with Gao Feng. It had been a month, but Gao Feng had not started to use these 4 completely jade-textured green elm boards to make objects. Hu Quan was now a Class 5 spirit craftsman and could definitely help Gao Feng, so Lin Yuan replied. Lin Yuan said, "If you can't find a Class 5 spirit craftsman to help, I have one here. If you need, send me the blueprints of the objects you want to make and the 4 completely jade-textured green elm boards." As soon as Gao Feng heard Lin Yuan's words, he immediately felt the annoyance in his heart disappear. Gao Feng suddenly realized that the sea breeze in early winter was too cold. He was just a weak, pure support. Why did he have to be trampled by the sea breeze here? At the same time, Lin Yuan's weight in Gao Feng's heart became even heavier. Even if Gao Feng's other friends could find Class 5 spirit craftsmen, they would never take the initiative to help. This was because no one was willing to owe a Class 5 spirit craftsman a favor for someone else. "Brother, thank you so much. I've already drawn the blueprint. I'll mail it to you when I get home." Hearing that Gao Feng was fine, Lin Yuan's voice sounded relaxed. He directly stated the purpose of his call. "Gao Feng, do you know where to get the flesh of a gold water world dimensional creature?" Gao Feng was immediately surprised and asked, "What's going on? Brother, why do you want that thing? That thing stinks and it's poisonous. No one would put it away." Some time ago, a Class 2 water world dimensional rift opened up in the coastal waters controlled by our Gao clan. The water world dimensional creatures that surged out from inside immediately turned into biochemical weapons after they were killed. 6. After the people who went to deal with the Class 2 Water World Dimensional Rift came back, they didn't eat properly for a week. The flesh and blood of those water world dimensional creatures were thrown into the bottom of the sea after they were killed. When Lin Yuan heard Gao Feng's words, he had an idea. From the looks of it, it wasn't impossible to obtain the flesh of the water world dimensional life forms. After some time it would be the active period for dimensional rifts. By then not only would the dimensional rifts on land become unstable, but the chances of them opening up would also be higher. It was the same for the water world dimensional rift in the sea. The Gao family had been developing coastal resources and had already taken control of a lot of coastal waters. In that case, as long as Gao Feng waited for the dimensional rift to erupt, he would pay attention to the water world dimensional rift in the coastal waters. When the time came, he would definitely be able to obtain the flesh of a gold water world dimensional creature for Red Thorn to devour. It helped the petals of Red Thorn's 12 large flowers undergo a gill-like mutation. It allowed Red Thorn's ability to breathe underwater to become stronger. Gao Feng, when the dimensional rift is active, can you help me get some gold water world dimensional life forms flesh? When Gao Feng heard this, he immediately expressed that there was no problem. Gao Feng said after thinking for a while, "Brother, if I go now, I should be able to get the flesh of a bronze water world dimensional life form. Do you think it's useful?" When Lin Yuan heard Gao Feng's words, he pondered for a while. Red Thorn was now a silver/fantasy breed fae. Even if the flesh of a bronze water world dimensional life form was useful, the effect was really too weak. The mutation effect on Red Thorn could be said to be negligible. There was no need for Gao Feng to expend effort to find the flesh of a bronze water world dimensional life form. The flesh of a water world dimensional life form below gold is of no use to me. I need the flesh of a gold or platinum water world dimensional life form. In Lin Yuan's opinion, although the flesh of a platinum water world dimensional life form could not be eaten yet, there was no harm in storing more. After hanging up the phone, Lin Yuan was a little curious. Why did the boorish man, Big Brother Feng, and Gao Feng have such lingering fears about the flesh of a water world dimensional life form? Lin Yuan's curiosity was uncontrollable. Then Lin Yuan came to the open space outside the main mansion and summoned the smallest platinum water world dimensional life form from the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box. This smallest platinum water world dimensional life form was more than 8 meters long. It looked like a strange fish. This strange fish's body was covered with a layer of anemone-like tentacles. The color of these tentacles looked very bright. However, after careful observation, one could see that these tentacles were hidden with pitch-black stingers, which were obviously highly toxic. Based on body structure alone, most of these water world dimensional life forms were tentacle-type dimensional life forms. Obviously, their combat ability should not be weak. As soon as Lin Yuan summoned the platinum water world dimensional life form with strange tentacles, he almost fainted from the smell. Since Lin Yuan was standing outside against the wind, he did not wait for this 8-meter-long strange tentacle fish to land on the ground. Lin Yuan smelled something he had never smelled in his life. A pungent fishy smell. Lin Yuan did not know how to describe this smell. It was like putting the internal organs of dozens of sea fish in a jar of sauce. It was covered with a layer of plastic and then exposed to the sun for 10 days. When the innards of the dozen or so fishes turned green, they were rolled into a pancake and eaten. That was probably how it tasted. Of course, Lin Yuan's description might not be accurate. Perhaps the smell of the green internal organs of the dozens of fish phase was not as pungent as the smell of this water world dimensional life form's flesh and blood. Lin Yuan hurriedly took advantage of the fact that the platinum water world dimensional life form had yet to land on the ground. Then he stored this water world dimensional life form back into the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box again. He had heard from Big Brother Feng that this platinum water world dimensional life form would easily decay when exposed to air. He didn't want to smell the putrid stench of this platinum dimensional life form after it decayed. Even after he stored this platinum water world dimensional life form back into the leaf-shaped diamond face storage box, Lin Yuan's abdomen was still churning. Lin Yuan looked at the large pile of smelly mucus on this open space, and the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch wildly. Lin Yuan hurriedly returned to the mansion, took out the cleaning tools and dealt with the platinum water world dimensional life form. Even though it did not fall to the ground, a lot of mucus still dripped from the surface of its body. When dealing with this mucus, if Lin Yuan did not have good endurance, he would have vomited it out. Chapter 379. Under this ostrich logistics courier's strange gaze, Lin Yuan accepted the express delivery with some confusion. Then the ostrich logistics courier rode on his flying fei as if he was fleeing and quickly left within 500 meters of the return from faraway manor. Lin Yuan looked at the gold ingredients in the silver fei storage box he had bought from Big Brother Feng. He lowered his head and sniffed the smell on his clothes in disgust. Lin Yuan only felt his stomach churn again, and he hurriedly used Morbius' calm mind on himself. Only then did it prevent Lin Yuan from spitting out a parabola from his mouth. Since Lin Yuan had been standing against the wind in the open space outside the manor, his clothes were also stained with the fishy smell of the water world dimensional life form's flesh. The fishy smell of the water world dimensional life form's flesh lasted much longer than those perfumes. If he did not wash it a few times, he would not be able to get rid of this fishy smell. Lin Yuan hurriedly took this silver fei storage box's gold ingredients back into the manor and placed it on the completely jade-textured wood table. Then he went upstairs to take a shower and change his clothes. After washing the stinky clothes he had just changed out of, he felt that he should really change his name to Lin Tossing. Lin Yuan felt that he should really change his name to Lin Tossing. He had jumped into the artificial lake once tonight, cleaned the courtyard for 3 hours, taken 2 showers and changed his clothes twice. If this was not Lin Tossing, what would it be? With that thought, Lin Yuan suddenly paused. It seemed that he could not call himself Lin Tossing or Big Brother Bath. Lin Yuan's biological clock had been changed during this period. Every day he would go to bed before 11 o'clock. Lin Yuan looked at the time and found that it was already past 1 o'clock in the morning. However, Lin Yuan was no longer sleepy because of the fishy smell of the water world dimensional life form's flesh. He simply went downstairs and took the gold ingredients in the silver fei storage box to the kitchen. They were placed in categories on the huge shelves in the kitchen that almost occupied one wall. After placing these gold ingredients, Lin Yuan carefully washed his hands before returning to his room. After returning to his room, he thought of the beeswax box that Mystic Moon had brought for his master, the Moon Empress. He summoned the small beeswax box from his amber button-shaped diamond fei storage box. Lin Yuan leaned on the bed and opened the beeswax box. Lin Yuan sat up on the bed. There were 3 items in the small beeswax box. It was a hollowed-out pendant made of flowing cloud beeswax. The pendant looked very exquisite. This pendant was engraved with layers upon layers of osmanthus flower patterns. It seemed to be filled with a kind of pure osmanthus aura. Layers of osmanthus flowers seemed to grow in the shade of the tree. There was a small groove above the pendant. Lin Yuan looked at the size of the groove and casually flipped it over. He took out the extreme token that he had placed in the spirit lock spatial zone. This extreme token contained the Moon Empress Moonlight domain once. It was also the trump card that the Moon Empress had left for him in addition to the Path Protector, the Mother of Bloodbath. The Moonlight domain sealed by the extreme token could not only protect him but also allow him to launch a killing blow at a necessary moment. This extreme token could be embedded in the hollowed-out pendant made of flowing cloud beeswax. Lin Yuan looked at the groove where the extreme token was embedded in the flowing cloud beeswax pendant and found that it fit perfectly. A crescent moon pattern was revealed from the hollowed-out hole of the flowing cloud beeswax pendant. It made the osmanthus flower pattern on the pendant look like an osmanthus flower growing peacefully under the moonlight. There was a kind of osmanthus leaves the evening color, and the curtain shadows the faint autumn light. The decadent wind has yet to fall and the night has yet to end. There was no struggle and silence, but it had invisibly become the most beautiful scenery under the moon. There was no need for light green and light red, it was naturally first-rate among flowers. Lin Yuan did not know why he suddenly thought of this poem. This poem could be considered as a form of encouragement. Lin Yuan looked at the flowing cloud beeswax pendant again and stood up. He found a black rope and threaded it through the hole of the flowing cloud beeswax pendant before hanging it around his neck. Then he put the flowing cloud beeswax pendant on his neck into his close-fitting clothes. It was next to his chest. The flowing cloud beeswax pendant was made of a kind of spiritual material that could quickly conduct spiritual power and was very sensitive to spiritual power. After placing the extreme token in the pendant, Lin Yuan only needed to circulate the spiritual power in his body slightly. He injected his spiritual power into the flowing cloud beeswax pendant. Then the extreme token in the pendant would immediately activate and release the moonlight domain sealed in the extreme token. He looked at the 3 star-shaped stamens on the osmanthus flower engraved on the extreme token. Lin Yuan immediately recognized that this was the silver stamen gold luster kasha. This pendant should have been carved by his master, the Moon Empress, for him. As for the other 2 things in the amber box, one of them was a light green liquid in a crystal bottle. Lin Yuan took the crystal bottle and saw a line of words engraved on the bottle's wall. Disciple, that source type item is a spatial source type item. This bottle of spirit liquid is spirit liquid with hollow crystal shellfish shell powder added. As for how to use the spirit liquid in this bottle and that source type item, just take it as master testing you. Looking at the words on the bottle, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that his master, the Moon Empress, wanted to give him something. She even wanted to find a reason for his independence. This made Lin Yuan feel very ashamed. For the first time, Lin Yuan felt that he was a little too independent. However, if he wanted to make a career, he could not rely on his master, the Moon Empress. He could rely on his master for a lifetime. As for the Moon Empress test, as long as a Class 2 creation master carefully studied it, they would definitely be able to see how to contract a source type item. Even if they could not see the effect of the source type item after contracting, they would definitely be able to see how to contract a source type item. At a glance, the light green spirit liquid in the bottle was related to the contract method of this source type item. As long as he knew how to contract a spatial source type item, he would naturally know how to use the light green spirit liquid. His master, the Moon Empress, had always known that he was a Class 2 creation master, so this was not considered a test at all. Lin Yuan opened the bottle stopper of the light green spirit liquid. The moment he opened the bottle stopper of the light green spirit liquid, a wave of pure spirit chi mixed with medicinal properties rushed toward his face. Today's first ticket, end of this chapter. Chapter 380. Lin Yuan found that the light green spirit liquid in this bottle contained an extremely high concentration of spirit chi. However, in comparison, it was still a little less pure and concentrated than the spirit chi in his spirit lock spatial zone. Although the concentration of spirit chi in this bottle of light green spirit liquid was not as concentrated as in his spirit lock spatial zone. However, the majestic medicinal properties contained in it were something that Lin Yuan could not produce no matter what. The majestic medicinal properties floated out of the bottle mouth. It made Lin Yuan feel as though the space in front of him was torn and distorted by the medicinal properties containing spatial energy in the bottle. This medicinal properties containing spatial energy should be the result of adding hollow crystal shellfish shell powder in this spirit liquid. Speaking of hollow crystal shellfish, it was a famous existence in the Radiance Federation. A fey like the hollow crystal shellfish was the reason why Ostrich Logistics could deliver goods within 3 hours no matter where they were. Ostrich Logistics claimed that it had cultivated the hollow crystal shellfish. It could be considered a core fey for Ostrich Logistics to settle down. At the same time, Ostrich Logistics had extremely strict control over the hollow crystal shellfish it had cultivated and would not allow them to flow outside of Ostrich Logistics. Lin Yuan had also thought about Ostrich Logistics' hollow crystal shellfish, but he had never had a way. This bottle of light green spirit liquid contained Ostrich Logistics' treasure, the hollow crystal shellfish shell powder. Given Ostrich Logistics' level of control over the hollow crystal shellfish, probably only experts at the level of his master, the Moon Empress. Only then could he get the hollow crystal shellfish shell from a semi-official faction like Ostrich Logistics. Then Lin Yuan looked at the third item in this beeswax box. This third item was the spatial source type that his master, the Moon Empress, had mentioned. There were hundreds of types of source type items announced in the Radiance Federation, but none of them were spatial source type. However, this did not mean that spatial source type items did not exist. On the contrary, as long as spatial source type items appeared, they would be fought over by the major factions. Spatial source type items had always been the rarest of all source type items. At the same time, there were many types of spatial source type items. Some were good at fighting, some were good at defense, and some had special functions. Some factions even compared one of the spatial source type items with the island whale. At one point, this specific spatial source type item was elevated to the level of a strategic treasure. This specific spatial source type item was raised to a strategic level treasure by the major factions. This was because the existence of such a specific spatial source type item was equivalent to obtaining the qualifications for spatial teleportation. The spatial source type life form in front of him was precisely this kind of spatial source type life form that could teleport. It could be said that spatial source type items that could teleport were not as precious as the island whale. However, if one were to take it seriously, it wouldn't be any less useful than the island whale. If a force could obtain the ability to teleport, this meant that they could ignore the hindrance caused by distance. It was conceivable how important spatial source type items were to the development of a faction. This kind of spatial source type life form that could carry out spatial teleportation was something that he could not obtain with his current foundation. Lin Yuan had been able to exchange for a strategic class treasure like the floating island whale with Gao Feng because the Gao family had spent a lot of resources but had not been able to hatch it. At the same time, due to the difference in the crystal eggshells of the floating island whale and the island whale, the Gao family regarded the unhatched floating island whale as a product of a failed mutation. Such a floating island whale was useless to the Gao family and would consume a lot of the family's resources instead. However, under such circumstances, Lin Yuan still took out 3 bronze/epic phase to exchange. Only then did he exchange for the floating island whale, which had been regarded as trash by the Gao family. One of the bronze/epic phase that Lin Yuan had exchanged for was the yellow spring lily, which was rare among bronze/epic phase. Only then did he exchange for the floating island whale, which was useless to the Gao family from Gao Feng. It could be seen how much importance the major factions attached to the degree of control of strategic class treasures. Lin Yuan knew that if his teacher, the Moon Empress, had not given him this spatial source type item that could teleport. With Lin Yuan's current resources and foundation, even if he took out a bronze/legend fei to exchange for it, he would not be able to exchange for a spatial source type item that could teleport. After all, no matter how precious a bronze/legend fei was, it could only allow a spirit chi professional to have a bronze/fantasy breed fei. However, a spatial source type item that could teleport was a strategic class treasure that could benefit a faction and allow it to develop rapidly. Even if Lin Yuan used many bronze/legend feis to exchange for it, how could Lin Yuan let this bronze/legend fei easily flow into the market? Lin Yuan had been using true data to check this source type item. This source type item was like a transparent glass ball, but if one calmed down and observed carefully they would be able to see it. It was a transparent glass ball and there seemed to be something transparent floating inside it. This source type item was called the ethereal jellyfish. The way to contract with the ethereal jellyfish required the transparent outer shell to be broken. Then it would be fed with a spirit fluid that was highly mixed with spatial energy and contained a high concentration of spirit chi within 1 minute. If it was not fed with a specific spirit fluid for more than 1 minute, the ethereal jellyfish would die. When the ethereal jellyfish was fed to normal I/normal, then it would drip a large amount of the contractor's blood and let the blood stimulate the ethereal jellyfish. It would cause the ethereal jellyfish to be stimulated by the blood and spit out all 3 gastric sacs in its body. At that moment, it would inject a large amount of the contractor's blood into the ethereal jellyfish. It would use the blood to help the ethereal jellyfish grow 3 gastric sacs again. At that moment, the ethereal jellyfish's contract would be considered successful. Lin Yuan looked at the ethereal jellyfish's contract method displayed under true data and could not help but feel that this source-type lifeform's contract method was really strange. Lin Yuan used his hand to touch it, which was still in this glass-like sphere. The ethereal jellyfish, whose physical body could not be seen, muttered softly. "With this ethereal jellyfish I can teleport. Then the Sky City's white-clothed followers plan can also start to be implemented." With that thought, a glint flashed in Lin Yuan's eyes. From now on, Sky City would not only collect resources, it would also develop its military force. Yesterday's second update, seeking recommendation votes. Tomorrow, I will try to finish updating the 4 chapters before 8 p.m. End of this chapter. Chapter 381. Just as Lin Yuan was preparing to contract this source-type life form, the ethereal jellyfish, he picked up the bottle that contained the light green spirit fluid. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly realized the difficulty of contracting the ethereal jellyfish. It was the kind of spirit fluid that was highly mixed with spatial energy and contained a high concentration of spirit chi. In a sense, it was the privilege of Class 5 creation masters. Only Class 5 creation masters could mix the spirit chi concentration in the spirit fluid to such a degree. Even Pinnacle Class 4 creation masters might be able to use the hollow crystal shellfish's powder to perfectly fuse with the spirit fluid and release the spatial energy in the hollow crystal shellfish. However, it was impossible to achieve the concentration of spirit chi in this bottle of light green spirit fluid. It also meant that this source-type life form, the ethereal jellyfish, could only be contracted with the help of a Class 5 creation master. This source-type life form, the ethereal jellyfish's contract method might not have a high requirement for the contractor, but it had a high requirement for soft power. First, one had to find a Class 5 creation master, and the Class 5 creation master had to be willing to help. In this era, it was as difficult as ascending to heaven to find a Class 4 creation master. It was imaginable that even if a faction obtained this strategic treasure and used it to rapidly develop their faction, they would only be able to watch anxiously. They would not be able to form a contract with this ethereal jellyfish and be anxious. Apart from that, this ethereal jellyfish had a very special point. After a successful contract, the ethereal jellyfish's evolution path was a little similar to the acid corrosion queen bee. After the ethereal jellyfish was contracted, it was unable to fuse with the contractor's comprehended willpower rune. The source-type life form, the ethereal jellyfish, could only be evolved to Diamond X/Legend. It had to comprehend the willpower rune from heaven and earth to evolve into a fantasy breed. This made the ethereal jellyfish evolve into a fantasy breed no different from a wild fae. In fact, the ethereal jellyfish's situation wasn't bad for Lin Yuan. In fact, it was greatly beneficial. As Lin Yuan contracted more and more faes, even with Lin Yuan's comprehension ability, the willpower runes he comprehended were far from the speed of contracting phase and source-type life forms. Genius, Blackie, and the flash purple butterfly still didn't have a suitable willpower rune. However, the ethereal jellyfish did not need to fuse with willpower runes. Instead, it needed to comprehend willpower runes from the heaven and earth itself. This would greatly reduce the pressure on him to use the willpower rune. It was very difficult for phase and source-type life forms to comprehend willpower runes on their own. However, as long as the Fae or source-type life form could reach the legend quality as soon as possible, the legend quality would increase. The chances of a Fae or source-type life form possessing a willpower rune would also be higher. As for the source-type ethereal jellyfish, he could rely on his own strength to let the ethereal jellyfish reach legend at bronze. This would undoubtedly increase the chances of the ethereal jellyfish comprehending the willpower rune. As long as the ethereal jellyfish reached diamond rank 10, everything would be fine. The ethereal jellyfish was a source-type life form that could teleport. After becoming a fantasy breed, the ethereal jellyfish obtained a new exclusive skill that would greatly enhance its teleportation ability. However, even if the ethereal jellyfish did not evolve into a fantasy breed, as long as its level was high enough, it could perform long-distance teleportation. That was enough for Lin Yuan. He took the glass ball-shaped source-type ethereal jellyfish into the Spirit Lock spatial zone. When Lin Yuan entered the Spirit Lock spatial zone, he found that everything was quiet. Chimey had been sleeping on the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree. Only 1/3 of the mid-grade strange flames sealed in the 130 leaves of the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree had yet to be digested and absorbed. Lin Yuan sensed the state of Chimey's body. Chimey should not have to wait for the remaining 1/3 of the strange flames to be completely absorbed before waking up. At the same time, its quality would increase from Fantasy I to Fantasy II. As for the gray crane species Fey Gray, it was now lying on the cinnabar sweet osmanthus and sleeping soundly. During this period of time, Gray had eaten a lot of tang fish and had plenty of nutrients. In addition, it was nourished by the massive and pure spirit chi in the Spirit Lock spatial zone, which was constantly repairing its genetic model. At that moment, Gray was visibly stronger than before. He was no longer as skinny as he was before. While Gray was becoming stronger, a lot of its gray feathers had also fallen off. At the bottom of the fallen gray feathers, a layer of fluff that was whiter than snow grew. This layer of snow-white fluff was very soft and dense. Lin Yuan believed that it would not take long for snow-white feathers to grow out of this layer of snow-white fluff. It could be seen from the bottom layer of fluff that was whiter than snow. Gray should be a crane species Fey with white feathers. The Spirit Lock Spatial Zone's butler, the Wind Speed Rapid Antelope, was also lying on the side of the Pure Land of Bliss. It might be sleeping in an uncomfortable position, but it even shook its small head in a daze and nudged the white gravel on the Pure Land of Bliss before turning over. This turn, the Wind Speed Rapid Antelope's buttocks, which Lin Yuan had shaved into a heart-shaped shape, were facing Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan touched his nose and felt the Wind Speed Rapid Antelope's teasing love with its buttocks. Then Lin Yuan started to work on this source-type ethereal jellyfish on the workbench. Lin Yuan first separated a piece of black feather made of the day and night spirit silver from the source sand. Then he used this black feather to repeatedly knock on the glass-like shell on the ethereal jellyfish's surface. After a few repetitive knocks, the glass-like shell cracked. He stretched out his hand and pressed hard on the crack. The glass shell of the ethereal jellyfish was smashed into pieces. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly realized something. It turned out that these were the transparent ones in the glass-like shell. What looks like a liquid is not water. It was the body of the ethereal jellyfish. It turned out that the beating thing was the heart of the ethereal jellyfish. He hurriedly poured the light green spirit liquid that contained rich spirit chi and majestic spatial energy on the ethereal jellyfish. Lin Yuan might have used spiritual ingredients to induce the elemental shellfish to mutate before, but he had never used them before. It allowed the elemental shellfish to transform into elemental shellfish of different attributes according to the spirit materials of different attributes. However, in order to induce the mutation of the elemental shellfish, one only needed to use the aura of the spirit material itself to touch the pearl in the depths of the elemental shellfish multiple times. However, the spatial energy required by the ethereal jellyfish was completely mixed with the spirit liquid. This allowed the majestic spatial energy and pure spiritual energy to merge into one, perfectly blending with each other in the spirit liquid. If Lin Yuan had to take out such a huge amount of pure spirit chi, he could do it. However, it was impossible for him to fuse such a huge amount of spirit chi and majestic spatial energy. Making up for yesterday's third chapter. End of this chapter. Chapter 382. Lin Yuan was very careful. He only dripped one drop of the light green spirit liquid on the ethereal jellyfish's body. Soon, Lin Yuan realized that the light green spirit liquid would vanish the moment it landed on the ethereal jellyfish's body. It was obvious that the ethereal jellyfish had absorbed the light green spirit liquid. However, there were no changes to the ethereal jellyfish after absorbing the light green spirit liquid. Lin Yuan continued to pour one drop of the light green spirit liquid at a time and repeated the process many times. When he poured 30 drops of the light green spirit liquid, Lin Yuan realized that there were 3 places in the ethereal jellyfish's body that had no color at all. 3 places in the ethereal jellyfish's body had become indistinct light green. The ethereal jellyfish's body was still in a transparent state. One could only see the ethereal jellyfish's indistinct beating heart in the air. Finally, Lin Yuan poured half a bottle of the light green spirit liquid into the ethereal jellyfish. The ethereal jellyfish still had no intention of spitting out the gastric pouches. However, the 3 light green spots in the ethereal jellyfish's body had become much bigger. It seemed like these 3 light green spots were the ethereal jellyfish's gastric pouches. Finally, when Lin Yuan poured out all the light green spirit liquid in the bottle, the ethereal jellyfish suddenly moved violently. The 3 constantly growing light green gastric pouches seemed to be stimulating the ethereal jellyfish's body. The ethereal jellyfish struggled to squirm its body and quickly spat out the 3 light green gastric pouches. After spitting out the 3 light green gastric pouches, the ethereal jellyfish seemed to have become weak and floated in the air. The heart that was faintly discernible in the air was beating at a much slower rate. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan ignored the 3 light green gastric pouches that the ethereal jellyfish had spat out. Instead, he took the black feather that was formed from the day and night spirit silver from the source sand that he had used before. Lin Yuan took the black feather and ruthlessly cut his palm. The moment Lin Yuan's palm was cut by the black feather, warm blood flowed through his palm and dripped onto the ethereal jellyfish's body. Immediately after, the ethereal jellyfish, which was originally in the air, absorbed Lin Yuan's blood into its body. Perhaps due to the loss of its stomach, the ethereal jellyfish's body was dyed red after absorbing Lin Yuan's blood. At this moment the ethereal jellyfish was in mid-air, and its entire body had turned light red. Only now did Lin Yuan see the ethereal jellyfish's full appearance. At this moment the normal level 1 normal ethereal jellyfish looked no different from the most common jellyfish in the sea. Its membrane-like body was wriggling slowly, and there were 20 to 30 tentacles that the jellyfish used to filter its food. He gently used his hand to touch these filtering tentacles and found that they were very soft to the touch. The exhausted ethereal jellyfish seemed to have regained its vitality with the injection of Lin Yuan's blood. His body, which looked like a thin film, suddenly became illusory, but then it became real again. The ethereal jellyfish wriggled in midair, looking as if it was shuttling back and forth in space. Every time it changed between reality and illusion, it would cause bursts of spatial energy fluctuations. As more and more of his blood was absorbed by the ethereal jellyfish, Lin Yuan noticed that most of the blood that dripped into the ethereal jellyfish's body was concentrated at its heart. The ethereal jellyfish's heart had become the darkest and reddest part of the ethereal jellyfish. However, Lin Yuan had already donated blood for 5 minutes. However, he realized that even after he had donated blood for 5 minutes, the ethereal jellyfish still did not seem to be full. The ethereal jellyfish was still greedily absorbing the blood that gushed out of his palm. Until now, the ethereal jellyfish's 3 stomach sacs had yet to regenerate. The speed at which blood flowed out of Lin Yuan's palm had become much slower. Due to the large amount of blood loss, Lin Yuan's arm had become numb. Lin Yuan gritted his teeth and used the day and night spirit silver feather to cut his other palm. This time, a large amount of blood dripped into the ethereal jellyfish's body. The moment the new blood dripped into the ethereal jellyfish's body, Lin Yuan realized that he could already connect with it. In the spiritual spatial zone, he could already establish a connection with the ethereal jellyfish. At the same time, the 3 stomach sacs that the ethereal jellyfish had spat out grew out again. However, the ethereal jellyfish's 3 stomach sacs were still pale red in color. As it floated in the air, it emitted a pale red radiance. It was just like a big lantern and looked very festive. However, Lin Yuan was a little speechless. If he had known this would happen, he would not have cut open his other palm as well. The blood from that hand was more than enough. Lin Yuan felt that he was really a heartless man to actually give himself an extra cut. At that moment, the jasmine lily on Lin Yuan's workbench rose into a ball of green light and landed on Lin Yuan's body. Lin Yuan's palm was visibly restored to its original state. Lin Yuan blinked his eyes. It seemed like not all the fays in the spirit lock spatial zone were asleep. At least the jasmine lily was still awake. However, even if the jasmine lily was awake, Lin Yuan would not be able to see it. Or rather, as a plant species fae, the jasmine lily did not sleep at all. After experiencing the weakness of excessive blood loss, Lin Yuan could completely feel how difficult it was for Zhang Xiaobai to raise a leech. Lin Yuan felt that he should also soak wolfberries in a thermos flask in the future and start a healthy life. Fortunately, the jasmine lily's ability heal could recover the lost vitality. It allowed Lin Yuan to replenish the lost blood in a short period of time. Therefore, Lin Yuan only experienced the feeling of anemia for a few minutes before returning to normal. The ethereal jellyfish had become Lin Yuan's contracted fae. Lin Yuan tried to communicate with the ethereal jellyfish, but he realized that its mind was in a state of chaos. It did not even have a very basic consciousness, and it was impossible to communicate. According to the ethereal jellyfish's unclear consciousness, Lin Yuan's thought was that he was the ethereal jellyfish's contractor, and all the ethereal jellyfish liked to float around him. It was because the ethereal jellyfish's chaotic feeling made it very safe to float around him. Lin Yuan could not help but hold his forehead. It seemed like this ethereal jellyfish had the lowest intelligence among all of his fays. After forming the contract with the ethereal jellyfish, Lin Yuan did not leave the spirit lock spatial zone. Instead, he started to enhance the ethereal jellyfish. He continued to enhance the ethereal jellyfish to elite/epic. Lin Yuan planned to choose the most useful exclusive skill among the 3 exclusive skills that would appear when the ethereal jellyfish reached bronze. Today's first chapter, end of this chapter. Chapter 383. Just as he was planning to enhance the ethereal jellyfish to bronze, the ethereal jellyfish suddenly appeared. Lin Yuan suddenly realized that the 3 light green gastric pouches that the ethereal jellyfish had spat out earlier had turned into light green crystals. These 3 light green crystals contained boundless spatial energy. Although Lin Yuan did not know what use the ethereal jellyfish's gastric pouches had turned into light green crystals, just by looking at the boundless spatial energy within them, they should be considered supreme-grade spatial spiritual ingredients. However, just by looking at the boundless spatial energy within these light green crystals, it was clear that these light green crystals formed from the 3 gastric sacs were extremely high-quality spatial attribute spirit materials. He placed the 3 ethereal jellyfish's gastric pouches into the brocade box. Then he carefully stored the brocade box into his amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. Lin Yuan carefully stored the brocade box into his amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. Then he let the light red ethereal jellyfish land on his palm. The ethereal jellyfish's 2 tentacles rested on both sides of Lin Yuan's palm. It was like Little Red Riding Hood with a red wig. With that thought in mind, Lin Yuan felt that his idea was a little dangerous. He released pure spirit qi into the ethereal jellyfish's body. Soon the ethereal jellyfish broke through the barrier of Elite X/Epic. It became a Bronze I/Normal Source-type life form. At that moment, 3 exclusive skills appeared on the ethereal jellyfish. Lin Yuan did not immediately observe the 3 new exclusive skills and choose one of them. Instead, he took a closer look at the Bronze I ethereal jellyfish's abilities. Fey name: Ethereal jellyfish, Fey species, Whiskered jellyfish/floating jellyfish, Fey grade, Bronze 1/10. Fey type: Spatial, Fey quality. Normal abilities: Frowny face tentacle node. By breaking off the tentacles, the broken tentacles will be treated as a spatial node. Node teleportation. By sensing the spatial node, teleport to a designated spatial node. Lin Yuan looked at the ethereal jellyfish's normal ability, tentacle node, and elite ability, node teleportation. Lin Yuan suddenly realized that this source-type ethereal jellyfish could already teleport when it was at bronze. Previously, when Lin Yuan and the Moon Empress were having a question-and-answer session, the Moon Empress had mentioned this. Under normal circumstances, it was a spatial source-type life form that could teleport. Usually, when there were 4 skills in the gold grade, there would be a teleportation system. But now, the ethereal jellyfish had become a teleportation system at the bronze stage. Even though the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation system was only the most basic one, the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation system still existed. However, every time the ethereal jellyfish evolved, the skills that appeared would enrich the ethereal jellyfish's system. However, he did not know how far the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation range was. As for the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation range, he still needed to experiment before he could accurately know. However, it was clear that this was not the best time to experiment with the ethereal jellyfish's tentacle nodes and node teleportation. After looking at the ethereal jellyfish's abilities, he had a rough understanding of its teleportation mechanism. The ethereal jellyfish used its tentacles as space nodes and fused the broken tentacles into space as a spatial marker. Then the ethereal jellyfish would find the spatial mark and teleport. After understanding the space jellyfish's 2 current skills, Lin Yuan started to look at the 3 exclusive skills. Among the ethereal jellyfish's 3 exclusive skills, the first was excess teleportation. Excess teleportation. Increase the number of targets that can be teleported within a certain range at the spatial node. Lin Yuan's eyes lit up when he saw this exclusive skill. As the ethereal jellyfish's contractor, Lin Yuan knew that it could not only teleport 1 target at a time. As the ethereal jellyfish's grade increased, the number of teleportation targets would also keep increasing. However, the number of teleportation targets that the ethereal jellyfish could teleport was still limited. For example, given the ethereal jellyfish's current bronze eye strength, it was already very difficult for it to teleport Lin Yuan alone. It could not teleport another person at all. The excessive teleportation directly turned the limited teleportation number of the ethereal jellyfish into a true mass teleportation. It could allow the ethereal jellyfish to teleport multiple targets at once. This exclusive skill, excess teleportation, increased the ethereal jellyfish's spatial teleportation functionality. This made Lin Yuan very surprised. With this exclusive skill, even if he did not have the other two exclusive skills to choose from, he could still use it. Lin Yuan felt that he could accept it gladly. However, he still checked the other two exclusive skills. When he saw the second exclusive skill, Lin Yuan first nodded and then shook his head. Firm node. Strengthen the spatial node's strength and extend the spatial node's teleportation distance. The second exclusive skill, Firm Node, could extend the teleportation distance and allow the ethereal jellyfish to teleport targets further. However, the ethereal jellyfish could not teleport too many things at once. No matter how far it could teleport, it could not compare to the first exclusive skill, excess teleportation. The effect of adding multiple teleportation targets was better. However, when Lin Yuan saw the third exclusive skill, he slapped his thigh. Lin Yuan slapped his thigh and chose the third exclusive skill without hesitation. Space Tunnel. Fix the formation of a special long-distance spatial tunnel by breaking off a large number of tentacles and fusing them into space. When there are 3 long-distance spatial tunnels, each time one is cancelled, a new one can only be set up. The third exclusive skill, Space Tunnel, allowed Lin Yuan to set up 3 spatial tunnels. It was the same as setting up a spatial tunnel that could always exist within a certain distance. Although choosing these 3 spatial tunnels sacrificed the ethereal jellyfish's ability to teleport to multiple targets or ultra-long distance. However, the strategic significance of Space Tunnel was clearly higher than the exclusive skills, Excess Teleportation and Firm Node. If Lin Yuan's floating island whale rose into the sky in the future and built a sky city on its back, the ethereal jellyfish's exclusive skill, Space Tunnel, could directly connect Lin Yuan to a bridge from the ground to the sky city on the floating island whale's back. Previously, Lin Yuan had also thought that when the floating island whale floated into the sky, if he did not let it land, if his private faction members, including himself, wanted to get on the floating island whale's back with the help of a flying fae that could fly high into the sky, if that was the case, the floating island whale and the sky city on its back would be discovered by people with ulterior motives. They would find the floating island whale's existence when the flying fae flew toward it. However, with the ethereal jellyfish's exclusive skill, Space Tunnel, on the one hand, it could enhance the convenience of transportation between the floating island whale and the ground. On the other hand, it could also make the floating island whale hidden in the clouds, truly untouchable like a floating cloud. Yesterday's second night, end of this chapter. Chapter 384. Could be seen from this exclusive skill, Space Tunnel. To the major factions, spatial source-type items that could teleport were of great strategic significance. Or rather, it could be said that Lin Yuan's ethereal jellyfish's exclusive skill, Space Tunnel, was very important to his faction, Sky City. Lin Yuan looked at the bronze eye/normal ethereal jellyfish. He decided to go into seclusion for the next few days. He planned to upgrade the ethereal jellyfish to legend at bronze before upgrading it to silver. As for upgrading the ethereal jellyfish to gold, it would take too long. Lin Yuan was not in a hurry. There was less than a month before the new year. He could not keep going into seclusion to enhance the ethereal jellyfish before the new year. Therefore, he planned to wait until after the new year to upgrade the ethereal jellyfish to gold. Looking at the few little fellows that were still sleeping in the Spirit Lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan felt a little sleepy. He did not immediately enhance the ethereal jellyfish. Instead, he exited the Spirit Lock spatial zone. He had to have a good sleep before working hard. It would not be too late to upgrade the ethereal jellyfish's quality and grade after he received Gao Feng's express delivery and handed it to Hu Quan. Lin Yuan did not plan to use spirit chi crystals to enhance the ethereal jellyfish this time. This was because the spirit chi crystals had other uses for him. Lin Yuan once again used the flower brocade pearls to exchange for strange flames in his Star Web store. This was to let Chimy's quality be upgraded to Fantasy 3 before he took the Radiance 100 sequence test and complete its bloodline evolution. At that time, Lin Yuan could use the spirit chi crystals to upgrade Chimy's grade from Silver Eye to Gold Eye. He would let Chimy become a Gold Eye/Fantasy 3 Fae. At that time, Chimy, which had undergone a bloodline transformation, would be Lin Yuan's trump card to face all the challenges in the test. The next morning, Lin Yuan received the gold Fae storage box that Gao Feng had mailed through Ostrich Logistics at the entrance of his mansion. After receiving the gold Fae storage box, Lin Yuan called Gao Feng to inform him. The gold phase storage box contained the 4 completely jade-textured green elm boards and blueprints that Gao Feng had sent over. After all, the items that Gao Feng had mailed were truly valuable. Even if Lin Yuan didn't inform Gao Feng would keep thinking about it. He returned to the mansion with the gold phase storage box and saw Hu Quan wiping the carving knife in his hand. Lin Yuan walked up to Hu Quan and said, "You're right. Uncle Hu, here are 4 completely jade-textured green elm boards. Are you interested?" Hu Quan's eyes immediately lit up when he heard this. A completely jade-textured green elm? Of course I'm interested in such a good thing. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan handed the gold phase storage box in his hand to Hu Quan. "Thank you, Uncle Hu. This is for a friend of mine. I'll ask him to discuss the price with you later." Since Gao Feng could not find a Class 5 spirit craftsman, Lin Yuan happened to know and helped him. As for the price of using these 4 completely jade-textured green elm boards according to the blueprint, Gao Feng and Hu Quan would have to discuss it themselves. Although Hu Quan had signed a contract with him, he would not ask for any compensation for any items he made for the manor and his own forces. However, Lin Yuan would not really treat Hu Quan as a tool. He didn't even tell Hu Quan what his friend wanted to make before throwing it to Hu Quan, letting Hu Quan unknowingly become a coolie. This was tantamount to disrespecting Hu Quan. Hu Quan was a little unhappy when he heard that. "Why are you being so polite to me? Go talk to your friends. I eat well in this manner and there are countless spiritual materials for me to use. I've long considered myself a part of this manor." As he said this, Hu Quan looked at the feature wall again. Hu Quan looked at himself next to Lin Yuan on the feature wall and said firmly to Lin Yuan, "Don't talk to me about remuneration next time. Giving me more completely jade-textured wood for my use is the best remuneration." At this point, Hu Quan smacked his lips and said, "Your friend is lucky. My fantasy breed wood weaving house centipede's first creation is going to be this object for your friend." At that moment, when you walked out of the kitchen and said to Hu Quan, "Uncle Hu, you really have to sleep at night in the future. Uncle Hu, you really have to sleep at night in the future. Otherwise you won't be able to endure it for too long. After all, it's time for the liver to detoxify at night. If you work so hard it will hurt your liver. Big brother Lu cooked cinnamon pork liver soup for you again today. Uncle Hu, even if you don't want to drink it, you must drink it all this time." When Hu Quan heard Wen Yu's well-intentioned tone, the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch wildly. Hu Quan hated the smell of liver the most in his life. However, recently Lu Jia had been cooking cinnamon pork liver soup for him. This made Hu Quan, who had never been taken care of, feel that he was being treated like a pregnant woman. However, it had to be said that even a boorish man like Hu Quan had been with everyone in the manor for a long time. Slowly he began to treat this manor as a home that he had to protect. However, the cinnamon pork liver soup was really hard to come by. Hu Quan knew that the cinnamon pork liver soup helped the body detoxify. Even if he pinched his nose, he still could not drink the pork liver soup's taste. At that moment, Hu Quan really felt that he should change his work and rest schedule. Otherwise, even an immortal would not be able to stand drinking this cinnamon pork liver soup every day. Lin Yuan looked at Hu Quan's grinning expression and could not help but laugh. Perhaps the only thing that could defeat Hu Quan, a Class 5 spirit craftsman, and make him not stay up late was the cinnamon pork liver soup. While eating, Lin Yuan found that Endless Summer, who had always been dressed like a punk, had become normal overnight. How did he become normal in just one night? At that moment, Endless Summer's hair had returned to its original hair color, and it was tied into a simple ponytail. Endless Summer was also wearing a very simple pinkish-white small suit. It matched with the body weaponization bracelet on her wrist, which was full of pinkish-purple hydrangea flowers, and some simple and grand spirit accessories. It made Endless Summer's entire aura appear elegant and noble. It no longer gave people a rustic, non-mainstream and heavy metal feeling like before. Lin Yuan looked at the Mother of Bloodbath. The Mother of Bloodbath nodded at Lin Yuan without leaving a trace, indicating that it had completed its mission. Lin Yuan gave the Mother of Bloodbath a thumbs up without leaving a trace. Lin Yuan did not expect the Mother of Bloodbath to complete its mission so well. But how did the Mother of Bloodbath complete its mission? Yesterday's third update, go to the ticket, end of this chapter. Chapter 385. Could it be related to those fat otakus that the mother of Bloodbath had been showing Endless Summer recently? During this time, Endless Summer had been eroded and influenced by the punk culture. It made Endless Summer's hair look like it had been struck by lightning. As soon as Lin Yuan saw Endless Summer, there were at least 5 colors on her hair. Moreover, Endless Summer's clothes were also very exaggerated. All kinds of strange clothes made Endless Summer look like a spirited little girl. The spirit accessories that Endless Summer had bought before were also put to use. Endless Summer hung almost all the spirit accessories that it had bought before on its body. This caused all kinds of spirit accessories to collide with each other no matter where Endless Summer went. Lin Yuan, Wen Yu, Lu Jia, and Hu Quan all tactfully mentioned the disadvantages of the punk style to Endless Summer. This allowed Endless Summer to appropriately slow down its style. However, be it Wen Yu, Lu Jia, or Hu Quan, even Lin Yuan had almost been influenced by Endless Summer's shameless metal culture. At one point, Lin Yuan thought that wearing 5 colors and all kinds of metal chains might look better. But in the end, rationality won over Endless Summer's introduction. What puzzled Lin Yuan was how the mother of Bloodbath had completely changed Endless Summer's taste after one night, even though she had been dressed very exaggeratedly yesterday. This made Lin Yuan rather curious. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the mother of Bloodbath say to Endless Summer, "Big Sister Summer, let me tell you. Big Sister Xia, let me tell you, those fat otakus like your previous style the most. If you still wear the same clothes as before, fat otakus will take photos of you on the street and post them on the Star Web forum. Then I don't know how many fat otakus will stick your photos on the wall. What do you think they will do to your photos at night?" Lin Yuan could clearly feel Endless Summer shiver. Immediately after, Lin Yuan realized that Endless Summer was looking at him, and she asked with some difficulty, Really?" When Lin Yuan heard Endless Summer asking him, he wanted to explain to Endless Summer that fat otakus were actually huge and gentle animals. What the mother of Bloodbath had said previously was not what fat otakus did. Fat otakus liked paper people, not punk photos. Fat otakus were almost as picky as emperors choosing concubines when looking for paper people. But then Lin Yuan saw the mother of Bloodbath blinking hard at him. The meaning in the mother of Bloodbath's eyes was obvious. It was obvious that he was saying that the task he had assigned to him had been completed. "If you screw this up again, you'll have to figure it out yourself. There's nothing I can do about it." Lin Yuan received the information from the mother of Bloodbath's eyes and first looked at Endless Summer's normal attire. He recalled Endless Summer's unconventional attire. Lin Yuan hurriedly cleared his throat and said, "That's right. Endless Summer, the mother of Bloodbath, is right. Your photo will turn yellow after a few days on the wall. Is Fat Otaku really that scary?" After saying that, in order to deepen the horror of the Fat Otaku, he pondered for a moment and said, "That's right. Do you know what is called a death camp?" Lin Yuan's words stunned Endless Summer. In fact, not only Endless Summer but even Lu Jia, Wen Yu and Hu Quan were also stunned. They were all thinking about Lin Yuan's question. Only the mother of Bloodbath looked at Lin Yuan with a scrutinizing gaze, as though it was the first time it truly knew him. Endless Summer said after thinking for a long time, "If it's a death camp, could it be the legendary Pond of Sin?" Lin Yuan shook his head. "The fat otaku's bed sheet is called a death camp." Endless Summer was a little confused and did not understand what Lin Yuan meant. However, Wen Yu, Lu Jia and Hu Quan understood what Lin Yuan meant. Immediately after, Lin Yuan saw that Endless Summer did not seem to understand the question he had asked before, so he quickly asked, "Endless Summer, do you know what can be called a life plunderer?" Endless Summer thought for a long time but could not think of a reason. With his suzerain/myth 3 strength, only creation breed life forms should be able to take his life. Lin Yuan felt that Endless Summer should really make up for it, did not even know such things. The fat otaku's hands can be called a life plunderer. Hu Quan was originally looking at the cinnamon pork liver soup in front of him with a difficult expression. However, when he heard Lin Yuan's words, he choked on the egg roll in his mouth and coughed violently. Endless Summer still did not seem to understand. However, the mother of Bloodbath looked at Lin Yuan with a very dangerous gaze. Lin Yuan looked at the mother of Bloodbath's eyes with a serious expression, just like when the mother of Bloodbath winked at him. He winked at the mother of Bloodbath. In his opinion, he was doing this for Endless Summer's sake. Otherwise, why would Lin Yuan go to a fat otaku who was such a gentle animal? The mother of Bloodbath looked at Lin Yuan and suddenly smacked its lips. How do you know so much? Cuff him up and take him away. Lin Yuan felt a little wronged. How would you know what I'm talking about if you don't understand? If they were to be taken away, the two of them would be handcuffed together. Hu Quan burst out laughing. However, before Hu Quan could laugh more, he heard when you say, Uncle Hu, if you don't drink the cinnamon pork liver soup while it's hot, it'll get cold. Brother Lu cooked it for you for 1.5 hours this morning. When you cleverly changed the topic and shifted the topic from Lin Yuan to Hu Quan. Hu Quan looked at the looming chunks of pig liver in the big bowl of cinnamon branch pork liver soup in front of him and felt a bitter taste in his mouth. Upon seeing that Hu Quan was not very interested in the cinnamon pork liver soup, Lin Yuan said to Lu Jie, Big brother Lu, I bought a lot of ingredients last night. If Uncle Hu doesn't like to drink pig liver soup, you can also drink beef liver soup or lamb liver soup. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan immediately picked up the bowl, pinched his nose and drank the cinnamon pork liver soup in one gulp. Then he quickly picked up the banana milk in his left hand and drank half a cup. He ate a few mouthfuls of fruit slices mixed with maple syrup before suppressing the taste of pig liver in his mouth. However, the more Hu Quan watched Lin Yuan eat breakfast slowly, the more he felt that Lin Yuan was actually a black-bellied kid. What was the difference between beef liver soup, lamb liver soup, and pig liver soup? Weren't they all liver? Moreover, wasn't the smell in this beef liver soup and lamb liver soup even worse? This kid must be taking revenge on me for not holding back my laughter when he was talking just now. After eating, Lin Yuan told everyone about his plan to enter seclusion for a period of time. Hu Quan rubbed his stomach and said, I happen to not be going back to the mansion today and tomorrow. Those old guys in the Spirit Craftsman Association are going to hold a Class 5 Spirit Craftsman ceremony for me. When I come back, I'll be a real Class 5 Spirit Craftsman. Today's first update, end of this chapter. Chapter 386. Looking at Hu Quan's joyful expression after achieving his goal in life, Lin Yuan said to Hu Quan with a smile. Then I'll congratulate Uncle Hu first. Hu Quan chuckled at first, then rolled his eyes at Lin Yuan and said in a bad mood, Don't worry. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have become a Class 5 Spirit Craftsman. Lu Jie said as he tidied up the tableware on the table. Uncle Hu, when are you coming back? Call us. When you come back, I'll cook a table of delicious food for you to celebrate. Hu Quan did not refuse but said subconsciously, I don't eat liver. Looking at Hu Quan's genuine expression, Lu Jie doubted his cooking skills for the first time. I've also drunk a lot of the cinnamon pork liver soup I made. It's quite delicious. Why did Hu Quan hate drinking cinnamon pork liver soup so much? Why don't I add some fish head and Sichuan sesame when I make cinnamon and pig liver soup for Hu Quan next time and make cinnamon and Sichuan sesame fish head and pig liver soup? While Hu Quan was nourishing his liver, he could also replenish his spirit. With that in mind, Lu Jie felt that his idea was simply too awesome. It was like killing two birds with one stone. After sending Hu Quan out, Lin Yuan returned to his room. After returning to his room, he logged into the Star Web as a creation master. The first thing he did when he logged into Star Web was to go to his purchase with no loss store. The 10 flower brocade pearls that he had displayed earlier were once again traded under the guise of blind trading. Then he started to check all the information he had received in the information bar during this period. Among these messages, most of them were asking if there were more flower brocade pearls that could be traded directly. Although these messages were sent in their own names, these people should have their own forces behind them. If a single person were to purchase so many flower brocade pearls, even a pinnacle class 4 creation master wouldn't be able to use them all. Lin Yuan had kept all this information. This was because Lin Yuan might make this deal in the future. Of course, there were also some messages asking if there were any bronze/epic phase here. Lin Yuan deleted all such information. Since Lin Yuan had already opened up a private faction territory on Star Web, he would not be able to do so. Furthermore, the main business direction he had set for his faction on Star Web was based on the different willpower runes comprehended by the Spirit Chi professionals. He was going to customize bronze/epic phase suitable for these Spirit Chi professionals with willpower runes. Thus, he naturally would not let his purchase with no loss store overlap with his private faction's business direction. Wouldn't that make him his own competitor? However, not being a competitor did not mean that he would not sell high-quality bronze phase through his purchase with no loss store in the future. Immediately after, he once again posted a trade message in his Star Web store. This message wasn't so much about exchanging items as it was about exchanging people. Lin Yuan wrote in his purchase with no loss store's exchange message. Recruiting king-class powerhouses with 3 or more willpower runes. If you give me your loyalty, I will give you a future. Lin Yuan directly released such a message with no intention of concealing his purpose. Lin Yuan did not write what kind of future he could give in this message. However, Lin Yuan believed that given the strength that his store had currently displayed, king-class experts who wanted to rely on a faction to obtain stable resources would definitely come into contact with him. However, Lin Yuan would not entertain ordinary king-class experts who came to contact with him. The king-class experts that Lin Yuan wanted to recruit needed to have at least 3 willpower runes. Lin Yuan's purpose of posting this message was not mainly to recruit those powerful king-class experts. Those powerful king-class experts were not easy to recruit. Those powerful king-class experts could completely pledge allegiance to top factions and obtain a massive amount of resources from top factions. What Lin Yuan really wanted to recruit were those king-class experts who had poor starting conditions and could only nurture one main fei after spending half a lifetime's resources. However, they had excellent talent and comprehended multiple willpower runes. Such king-class experts had always been limited by resources due to their poor starting point. Therefore, their main feis were often not very strong. They might have many willpower runes on the path of growth and could show their amazing talent. However, such king-class experts were still not favored by the veteran factions. This was because such king-class experts who did not have strong main feis could not immediately contribute to the veteran factions if they pledged allegiance to them. The veteran factions could only invest high-quality bronze feis in king-class experts with weak main feis. Only then would they be able to grow. The addition of such king-class experts was almost like constantly absorbing the veteran factions' resources. Moreover, it would take a long time for the feis to grow. The veteran factions were naturally unwilling to do such a loss-making business. It was very realistic in a world where strength was respected. Even if one had high talent, it could only be built up with high-quality bronze feis and massive resources. For the veteran factions, investing in king-class experts with powerful main feis was the best choice. Therefore, the king-class experts who only had one main fei and did not have strong main combatability but many willpower runes were in a very awkward position. After all, there were too few creation masters in this world. High-quality bronze feis were really precious. Even those king-class experts with powerful main feis had joined the veteran factions for more than a decade. It was not certain that they would be able to obtain a high-quality bronze fei that was suitable for them to comprehend a willpower rune. The more unpopular king-class experts with weak main feis but many willpower runes were by the veteran factions, the better it was for Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan welcomed such king-class experts very much. High-quality bronze feis might be difficult for others, but it was just a matter of a few dozen minutes for Lin Yuan. It could be said that Lin Yuan was now doing a business without capital. He was using things that he could easily obtain to exchange for the loyalty of king-class experts with weak main feis but many willpower runes. Moreover, after pouring high-grade bronze feis into such king-class experts, Lin Yuan could raise them in a free-range state. No matter how weak these king-class experts' main feis were, they could still have some savings and take out the resources to nurture their new feis. Lin Yuan did not need to spend any effort in the future and saved a lot of trouble. This was actually Lin Yuan's white-clothed follower plan. Today's second night watch, tomorrow's third night watch and tomorrow's first night watch. End of this chapter. Chapter 387. These king-class experts whose main feis were not strong but had multiple willpower runes, would receive the infusion of Lin Yuan's high-quality bronze feis. Perhaps they would not give Lin Yuan any strong returns in a short period of time. However, after a year or two these king-class experts would nurture their other feis. They would already be no different from those king-class experts with powerful main feis. In fact, they would even be stronger than those king-class experts with powerful main feis. Lin Yuan was not sure how many such king-class experts would look for him. However, every time such a king-class expert looked for him, it was equivalent to planting a seed in the soil that could bear fruit. As long as this seed could germinate in the soil, It was destined to bloom into a gorgeous flower. Lin Yuan did not believe that those king-class experts with low starting points but high talent would be willing to be mediocre. Lin Yuan had a temptation that any spirit chi professional could not resist. He was not like those veteran factions who only offered high-quality bronze phase. He offered high-quality bronze phase that could be customized according to the willpower runes. Therefore, the king had already opened up and was waiting for the fish to swim in. The news of Lin Yuan using the flower brocade pearls for blind trading was quickly known by those who paid attention to Lin Yuan's store. However, when these people came to Lin Yuan's purchase with no lost store to check, they were stunned by Lin Yuan's recruitment message. This one-star store's appetite was too big. Or rather, how many resources did it take to be able to say such words like, "Give me loyalty and I'll give you a future"? Lin Yuan logged off Star Web and returned to his Spirit Lock spatial zone, preparing to enhance the Bronze Eye/normal ethereal jellyfish. When Lin Yuan entered the Spirit Lock spatial zone, he found Gray playing hide-and-seek with the wind-speed rapid antelope. The two little fellows ran and chased, hiding, bringing a lot of fun to the Spirit Lock spatial zone. After Lin Yuan got close to the two little fellows' eyes lit up. For the next few days, Lin Yuan began to focus on enhancing the ethereal jellyfish to increase its grade and quality. For the past few days he had only slept for 4 to 5 hours a day, just like when he had been in seclusion. After spending 5 days he finally upgraded the ethereal jellyfish from Bronze Eye/normal to Bronze X/legend. Lin Yuan realized that the pale red ethereal jellyfish's color did not change. It was still the same pale red color after sucking his blood. However, the heart of the ethereal jellyfish would occasionally flash with a dark red light. At the same time, the ethereal jellyfish's body became much larger, and many bright silver patterns appeared on its body. When the ethereal jellyfish shrunk its body, it felt like it was shuttling through several dimensions. As the light flickered, it was so close, but there seemed to be layers of barriers that prevented people from touching it. However, when Lin Yuan stretched out his hand to touch the ethereal jellyfish, it would materialize its body from the layers of space and transform into a physical body, allowing Lin Yuan to touch it. When he had been enhancing the ethereal jellyfish, he had realized that it always liked to run to his head. When the ethereal jellyfish landed on his head, it felt very warm and cool, but it was very comfortable. However, when paired with the ethereal jellyfish's festive color, it made Lin Yuan feel like he was wearing Little Red Riding Hood and a red wig. Under Lin Yuan's intense protest and clear objection, the ethereal jellyfish no longer landed on his head. Instead, it liked to lazily lie on Lin Yuan's neck when it had nothing to do. Every time the ethereal jellyfish landed on Lin Yuan's neck, it was as if he was wearing a red scarf. However, in Lin Yuan's opinion, it was much better for it to be on his neck than on his head. As Lin Yuan continued to inject spirit chi into the ethereal jellyfish's body, the ethereal jellyfish broke through the limit of Bronze X and became a Silver Eye/legend source-type life form. When the ethereal jellyfish broke through to the silver tier, 3 long spiral-shaped tentacles grew out of its 30 short tentacles. These 3 long spiral-shaped tentacles were very thick and nearly twice the length of the short tentacles. These 3 thick spiral-shaped tentacles grew in the center of the ethereal jellyfish's body and were surrounded by a circle of short tentacles. This made the ethereal jellyfish look much more magnificent than ordinary jellyfish in the past. Immediately after, Lin Yuan started to check the ethereal jellyfish's true data. Fey name, ethereal jellyfish, Fey species, whiskered jellyfish/floating jellyfish, Fey grade, silver 1/10, Fey type, spatial, Fey quality. Legend abilities: Frowny Face Tentacle Node. By breaking off the tentacles, the broken tentacles will be treated as a spatial node. Node teleportation. By sensing the spatial node, it will teleport to the designated spatial node. Node trigger. Trigger the spatial node marked by the tentacle node and teleport the target of the triggered node to other tentacle nodes or the main body. After teleportation, the tentacle node will be ineffective. Exclusive skill: Frowny Face Space Tunnel. By breaking off a large number of tentacles, the tentacles will be fused into space to form a special long-distance spatial tunnel. When there are 3 long-distance spatial tunnels, each time one is destroyed, a new one can only be set up. After the ethereal jellyfish reached silver, the new silver ability was called Node Trigger. Node trigger was the first step for the ethereal jellyfish to perfect the teleportation system that had just been formed. The activation of the silver ability node had clearly given him quite a pleasant surprise. Node trigger increased the functionality of the ethereal jellyfish's original teleportation system. Node trigger could be said to allow Lin Yuan, the contractor, to enjoy the teleportation effect of the ethereal jellyfish. At the same time, the other tentacles holding the ethereal jellyfish could also teleport to various spatial nodes. After the teleportation, the tentacles that served as the teleportation medium would disappear. However, it made the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation system more flexible. In Lin Yuan's opinion, the ethereal jellyfish's silver ability was equivalent to a certain extent to make up for the tense situation of only being able to set up 3 spatial tunnels in the faction establishment. It allowed the ethereal jellyfish's various spatial nodes to be perfectly linked. As long as Lin Yuan's faction members had a small section of the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles, they could teleport to any spatial node. When they encountered danger, it was equivalent to giving Lin Yuan's faction members a chance to escape. Making up for yesterday's 3rd update, end of this chapter. Chapter 388. He did not need to worry if the enemy took the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles. If he wanted to use the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles to teleport between the nodes, he would need to take out a drop of blood in advance for the ethereal jellyfish to swallow. The blood that was swallowed by the ethereal jellyfish would be stored in its stomach. Only those whose blood had been memorized by the ethereal jellyfish would be able to trigger the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles to teleport between nodes. Lin Yuan cut off one of the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles, and he discovered that the tentacles were actually ethereal jellyfish. In 1 hour, the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles would grow 2 centimeters. The ethereal jellyfish's tentacles were 30 centimeters long, so Lin Yuan estimated that it would take about 15 hours for 1 tentacle to grow. Then he cut off all the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles. He now had a total of 30 ethereal jellyfish's tentacles. He first had to take these tentacles to the location where he wanted to set up the spatial node. The ethereal jellyfish seemed powerful, but it had its drawbacks. If the ethereal jellyfish wanted to teleport, it needed to set up the spatial node in advance. Moreover, the spatial node could not be too far out of the range that the ethereal jellyfish could cover. Lin Yuan looked at the ethereal jellyfish's silver eye/legend strength. The ethereal jellyfish's strength could only cover less than half of the royal capital. However, such a distance was enough for Lin Yuan now. As for long-distance teleportation, Lin Yuan could set up the spatial tunnel. The distance that the spatial tunnel could teleport would depend on the number of ethereal jellyfish's tentacles he used. The more tentacles he used, the further the spatial tunnel could be set up. Therefore, in order not to waste the ethereal jellyfish's teleportation resources, Lin Yuan would cut off the new tentacles for the ethereal jellyfish at regular intervals. Lin Yuan could feel that the tentacles were like human hair to the ethereal jellyfish, and it would not feel anything when they were cut off. Lin Yuan was really reluctant to cut off the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles. When Lin Yuan came out of seclusion in the Spirit Lock spatial zone, he realized that it was already late at night. He felt very tired, so he crawled into bed and planned to have a good sleep. However, the royal capital's night was not peaceful. Even though the stars and moon in the sky were blocked by layers of dark clouds, they were still brightly illuminated by the lights of the capital, filling the eyes with prosperity. The early winter season had passed and it had already become a real cold winter. The royal capital's weather might not be cold when compared to the true north, but the cold wind could easily blow through the Spirit Chi professional's Spirit Chi clothes. Sporadic snowflakes slowly drifted down from the dark clouds in the sky, but it did not change the lively atmosphere. It was almost the end of the year and many people came out in 2s and 3s at night. They gathered in some bars and restaurants and watched the broadcast of the Guild Alliance's tournament. In the main city area of the kingdom, in a very exquisite and stylish detached villa, a young man who looked to be in his late 20s was sitting on a black musk deer leather sofa. A black leopard that was more than 3 meters long was lying beside the young man's feet. At this moment the leopard seemed to be a little sleepy. Its tail was swaying and there was still blood at the corner of its mouth. It was obvious that it had just eaten. The young man held a crystal wine glass in his hand, but at this moment the crystal wine glass was being squeezed by the young man's fingers. It was as if it could explode at any moment. Behind the young man stood an old man in his 80s. The old man's back was bent, and his waist and legs almost formed a right angle. The old man was leaning on a walking stick. He was trembling as if a strong gust of wind could blow him down. At this moment the 28-year-old youth's eyes were terrifyingly sinister. He was staring unblinkingly at the two dignified middle-aged men standing in front of him. The two dignified middle-aged men stood there, their foreheads dripping with sweat. His eyes were filled with caution and fear towards this sinister-looking young man. The sinister-looking young man said coldly, "You two, tell me, how long has it been?" The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce still hadn't taken it down. One of the slightly younger middle-aged men hurriedly said, "Young Master Zheng, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce can no longer withstand our pressure and moved from Indigo Azure City to the royal capital. The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce has shrunk and abandoned all the industries in Indigo Azure City. It no longer has a foundation." The malicious-looking youth's tone suddenly became like a spring breeze. "So, according to you, you still have credit, right?" The slightly younger middle-aged man's expression clearly relaxed when he heard the malicious-looking youth's words. He didn't notice that the expression of his older companion standing beside him had suddenly become uneasy. Instead, he continued to speak to himself. "Young Master Zheng, we don't dare to claim credit, but the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources are too complicated. We still need some time to target them." The malicious-looking youth was so angry that he laughed and fiercely slapped the armrest of the musk deerskin sofa, making a loud bang. The slightly younger middle-aged man who had just spoken was so scared that he knelt on the ground. The malicious-looking youth shouted angrily, "Are you a pig? A Chamber of Commerce's online resources target each store on Star Web. Who knows how many stores on Star Web have signed purchase contracts with the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce? Only a pig would think of targeting the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources." The middle-aged man kneeling on the ground really didn't know what to say and squeezed out 3 words after a long while. "I'm a pig." The malicious-looking young man almost couldn't catch his breath. He was so angry that he crushed the wine glass in his hand. The malicious-looking youth who had crushed the wine glass threw the cup in his hand onto the forehead of the middle-aged man kneeling on the ground, leaving a trail of blood. Following which, the malicious-looking youth shifted his gaze to the other middle-aged man. "Speaking of, is this how the Zheng family supports the two of you to do things? When you two brothers attacked the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce controlled by your father, you weren't as soft as you are now. Hehe. First place for seizing power? Is doing something harder than eating shit." Hearing this, the older middle-aged man immediately knelt on the ground and said in fear, "The two of us only got to where we are today because of young Master Zheng's support. We'll do whatever young Master Zheng tells us to do." The malicious-looking youth kicked the drowsy Black Panther beside him. After being kicked, the Black Panther roared, revealing a mouthful of sharp teeth. But after seeing that it was the malicious-looking youth who had kicked it, the Black Panther continued to lie on the ground without saying a word. The malicious-looking youth looked at the 2 middle-aged men kneeling in front of him and said, "You're not as good as this stupid panther. You are all inferior to this stupid leopard. Don't you have any teeth? I thought you knew when you seized your father's Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce that those who were bitten to death by sharp teeth were destined to not be able to block the way anymore." Today's first update, asking for votes. Changed the article. The foreshadowing is done. I'll speed up the pace in the future. Sob, sob, sob. End of this chapter. Chapter 389. The 2 middle-aged men who were kneeling on the ground looked at each other when they heard the malicious-looking youth's words. Then the younger middle-aged man said carefully, "Young Master Zheng, I heard that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce has also found a backer. The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was originally an empty shell. What do you think?" The malicious-looking youth's gaze became increasingly dangerous as he looked at the 2 middle-aged men kneeling in front of him. Since the listening Heron Union has moved from Indigo Azure City to the royal capital, it has moved right under your noses. Don't tell me that you can't control the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, which has given up all its offline resources, right under your nose. As for the rest, I will take care of it." After the two middle-aged men received the order and reply from the sinister-looking young man, they quickly retreated out of the room in the villa in fear. At this moment, the hunchbacked old man behind the sinister-looking young man suddenly spoke. "Young master, I've heard of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's current leader. Listen." The malicious-looking young man stood up and shrugged as he said nonchalantly. "Elder Nyo, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce is just an ant. So what if Listen is a big shot? How can someone who doesn't even have a chess piece be worthy of playing chess?" From the sinister-looking youth's tone, it could be heard that he did not take Listen seriously. The hunchbacked old man had wanted to say something, but after hearing what the sinister-looking young man said, he stopped. "Young master, do you want me to probe the faction behind the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce?" The sinister-looking youth waved his hand and said, "Given the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's current situation, do you think it will be a veteran faction that can take over the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce? What I'm really interested in is the coastal sea controlled by the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce in Indigo Azure City. My Zheng family wants to develop coastal resources in Indigo Azure City. So this small coastal sea in the hands of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce is destined to belong to my Zheng family. If there really is a force that wants to block the way." At this point, the malicious-looking youth lowered his head and suddenly stopped talking. The hunchbacked elder Nyo paused for a moment before asking, "What are your plans, young master?" The malicious-looking youth said as he looked at the shattered wine glass on the ground. The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's backer might not necessarily manage the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, but if this backer really wants to touch the Zheng family's interests, then it is better to let him be the cup on the ground. The stooped old Nyo replied after listening to the sinister-looking youth's words. "I understand, young master, leave this matter to me." The malicious-looking man nodded lightly, then used almost all his strength to kick the Black Panther lying on the ground. Ever since the Black Panther was kicked awake, it had not closed its eyes to rest. Seeing the sinister-looking young man kick at it, the black leopard was clearly afraid and did not dare to dodge at all, taking the kick head-on. The sinister-looking youth sat on the back of the Black Panther and said, "I want everything to be done before the active period of the dimensional rift. Otherwise, if the main family blames me, I won't be able to bear the consequences." Old Nyo's hunched back seemed to bend even lower. "Rest assured, young master." Under the night sky, the wind carried snow and a bone-piercing chill as it surged in the direction of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. The winter sun was lazier than usual. The sun rose high in the sky at 5 or 6 o'clock in the summer. Even though it was already 7 or 8 o'clock, the sky was just beginning to brighten. He had been working hard to enhance the ethereal jellyfish for the past few days. Therefore, according to his usual resting time after working hard, Lin Yuan would probably sleep until noon. He was probably going to sleep until noon to replenish the vitality that he had lost in the past few days. However, it was only 7 o'clock in the morning today. When the sky had just brightened, Lin Yuan woke up from his sleep. He could sense that Chimey had woken up from the bird's nest made by the phoenix perching Chinese parasol trees' branches and leaves in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Lin Yuan summoned the awakened Chimey from the Spirit Lock spatial zone. After Lin Yuan summoned Chimey, it chirped a few times. When Lin Yuan heard Chimey's chirping, he felt that it was like the collision of soft jade. It was not only pleasing to the ear. Chimey's chirping seemed to be able to penetrate deep into the soul and become a soul voice that was compatible with the soul. Lin Yuan could not help but be speechless. Given Chimey's current voice, if it were to sing, wouldn't it be amazing? After the chirping, Chimey immediately landed on Lin Yuan's ear. It used its mouth to peck at the loose hair beside Lin Yuan's ear and tidied up the loose hair that had been stuck up by the pillow when he was sleeping. Immediately after, Chimey jumped onto Genius' small head. It used its small claws to jump around on Genius' head. Genius was woken up from his slumber in just a few moments. Genius let out a meow that was filled with laziness. However, when Genius saw that it was Chimey, it immediately became spirited. The two furry tails behind it rose up, and the two small tails joined together like a small arch bridge. Chimey flapped its wings and landed on the small arch bridge formed by Genius' tails. Then Genius swayed its tails and let Chimey feel like it was swinging on the arch bridge formed by its two tails. Chimey had a happy expression on its face. Lin Yuan rubbed Genius' small head and said, "Genius, you dote on Chimey too much. You dote on Chimey too much." When Chimey heard Lin Yuan's words, it chirped twice to express its protest. "Genius and Lin Yuan both dote on me." When Lin Yuan heard that Chimey could actually speak, he was stunned for a moment before he was pleasantly surprised. Lin Yuan did not expect Chimey to unlock the ability to speak after evolving from Fantasy I to Fantasy II. Actually, it made sense. Chimey would usually be able to understand Lin Yuan's words. In the past, Chimey might have learned to sing like a parrot, but it had also laid down a language foundation for Chimey. Now that Chimey was able to speak, it might not be very proficient. However, it would need to go through a period of practice or wait for Chimey's quality to evolve from Fantasy II to Fantasy III and undergo a bloodline evolution. Chimey would then be able to converse freely like a normal person. Lin Yuan extended his finger and said, "Chimey, come over. Let me see if there are any changes after your quality upgrade." Chimey immediately flew from Genius' tail to Lin Yuan's hand. It chirped twice and said, "That's right." It chirped twice and said, "Lin Yuan, Chimey has become beautiful." After speaking, Chimey spread out its wings and showed them to Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan realized that Chimey's size might not have increased after evolving to Fantasy II, but it was still as exquisite and small as before. However, Lin Yuan could clearly see that the cloud imprints on Chimey's feathers had become heavier, and the starlight halo hidden on each cloud imprint seemed to have become much brighter. Yesterday's second update, end of this chapter. Chapter 390. Even though Chimey wasn't using the radiant body, the stars in the cloud patterns on its feather were faintly emitting a glass-like brilliance. At the same time, the feathers on Chimey's head grew longer, and some inconspicuous patterns appeared on the feathers. Lin Yuan could not tell what these patterns looked like. The curled feathers matched with the patterns made it look like Chimey was wearing a crown on its head. Lin Yuan knew that Chimey's bloodline had been stimulated to a greater extent. Otherwise, Chimey's appearance would not have changed so easily with the naked eye. After Chimey woke up from its improved quality state, Genius was obviously overjoyed. Lin Yuan knew that Genius had a small habit. The happier it was, the higher its tail would be. Now Genius's two little tails were about to reach the sky. However, he still had to let Chimey continue to improve its quality on the tree nest surrounded by the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's branches and leaves, increasing its quality from Fantasy II to Fantasy III. Therefore Lin Yuan said to Chimey, "Yining, can we go to the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree to improve its quality next?" After hearing Lin Yuan's words, Chimey chirped twice and rolled its small eyes before saying, "All right, let's go." "Lin Yuan, can you teach me more songs the next time I wake up?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan used his finger to tease Chimey lovingly. "You're such a smart girl. Of course, it's not a problem if you want to learn to sing. I'll teach you as many songs as you want to learn in the future." When Chimey received Lin Yuan's reply, it immediately flew around the house twice excitedly. Its eyes seemed to flash with a large number of comments praising it in the live-streaming room. Chimey thought in its little head, "The sparrow-voiced lowly goddess will still be busy for a period of time. Once I'm done, I'll sing a new song for all of you. You must praise me properly." However, Chimey didn't know that its disappearance for such a long time had made its fans, who had been waiting bitterly in the live-streaming room, suffer. Of course, the one who suffered the most was Roll One, who was still crazily sending gifts every day. At the same time, Chimey was abnormally excited to be able to increase its grade once again. A quality upgrade was an irresistible temptation to any fae. Moreover, after Chimey woke up this time, it could clearly feel that it had become a lot stronger. Therefore, even though Chimey was very lively and active, it was still willing to fall into a deep slumber to improve its quality and stimulate the bloodline in its body. On the other hand, when Genius heard that Chimey was going to sleep again, its originally raised tail immediately drooped down. Lin Yuan said as he rubbed Genius' head, "When Chimey is asleep, Genius, you can still play with Gray in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Gray should be able to come out and play with you after some time." Genius could sense the concern in Lin Yuan's words and immediately rubbed its little head against Lin Yuan's palm before nodding like a little adult. Lin Yuan looked at Genius and truly felt that he should quickly comprehend a willpower rune that was suitable for Genius. Then genius would be able to evolve into a fantasy breed. However, even if he could comprehend more willpower runes, he would not be able to do so. However, the comprehension of the willpower rune was not something that Lin Yuan could decide alone. It all depended on fate. After making arrangements for Chimey, he looked at the time and realized that it was already 7:30 am. However, Lin Yuan felt that his head was still groggy, and it was obvious that he did not have enough sleep. The feeling of sleeping half full would make him feel very weak for the rest of the day. Lin Yuan hugged Genius and laid on the bed. The winter sun might have risen late, but it was very warm when it shone through the window. Soon enough, Lin Yuan and Genius closed their eyes and fell into a deep slumber. Lin Yuan slept until noon. After waking up, he stretched and felt refreshed. After washing up, he carried Genius, who was still in a daze, and went downstairs. Lin Yuan was wearing a white matte spirit chi attire that was mixed with cotton. The white fabric was embroidered with goose yellow silk with rippling patterns. Lin Yuan's temperament was sunny and gentle, and with such a set of spirit chi attire, it made Lin Yuan's natural and amiable aura even more obvious. When Lin Yuan went downstairs, he saw Hu Quan sitting on the sofa made of water rhinoceros skin and instructing the fantasy breed wood weaving house centipede to rapidly devour the completely jade-textured wood powder. Then he let the wood weaving house centipede decompose and process the completely jade-textured wood powder in its stomach. Finally, tough completely jade-textured silk threads were ejected from the silk sac. Hu Quan's hands moved quickly and cleverly weaved these 2 strands of jade-textured silk threads onto a metal spiritual material frame that had already been constructed. In a short while, these tough jade-textured silk threads were entwined into a dark pattern of a majestic city in the clouds on the metal frame. At that moment, Hu Quan saw Lin Yuan walking down the stairs and quickly said, "Lin Yuan, come over here. Lin Yuan, come over for a moment. Let me see if this mask I made fits you." Lin Yuan walked over and looked at the object in Hu Quan's hand that was already half-formed. After looking at it for a long time, Lin Yuan finally saw that Hu Quan was making a mask. There were not many jade-textured silk threads entwined on the metal frame, and there were still many gaps. It was really hard to associate it with a mask. When Hu Quan saw Lin Yuan's expression, he felt that his spirit craftsman ability was being questioned. He pointed at the sofa at the side and said, "Sit there for 20 minutes. Sit there for 20 minutes and I'll be done with this mask." Immediately after, Hu Quan's hands danced nimbly again, pulling the silk threads spat out by the wood weaving house centipede and weaving them onto the metal frame. As time passed, the metal frame was slowly filled. Finally, Hu Quan took out some completely jade-textured wood blocks that had been polished before and tightened them with silk threads. Using the silk inlay technique, he embedded these 2 completely jade-textured wood blocks into the metal frame. During these 20 minutes, Lin Yuan watched Hu Quan create an exquisite mask from the frame bit by bit. The more Lin Yuan looked, the more he could feel the Class 5 spirit craftsman's ingenious craftsmanship when manipulating fantasy breed phase to make objects. As the only spirit craftsman in the mansion, Lin Yuan had naturally told Hu Quan about his vision for the Sky City. This mask happened to be made according to Lin Yuan's vision for the Sky City. After Hu Quan finished making the mask, he handed it to Lin Yuan and motioned for him to put it on. Lin Yuan took the mask from Hu Quan's hand and found that this seemingly heavy mask was unexpectedly light. When he put the mask on his face, it could only cover his eyes and nose. Yesterday's 3rd update. End of this chapter. That you're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.